Call to order the meeting, the September 25th meeting of the Nevada City Council. Have more to say as soon as I get to the top. All right.
Evan, pull it together.
Yeah, come on. So, all right, call to order. And if we would, Doug, if you would, please.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We acknowledge that the Nisenan people are still here among us today, though nearly invisible. We understand that we are on Nisenan land that was never ceded, and the original tribal families have yet to recover from the near genocide of their people. As a resident or visitor in the Nisenan land, we support the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe in efforts to stabilize their people, as well as their campaign to restore federal recognition.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
And Adam, if you,
Yeah.
Vice Mayor, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Gabby, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cici.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Here.
Vice Mayor Klein.
Here.
Mayor Peterson.
Here.
All members present.
And Dean is with us on Zoom. He's in the little box on the TV today.
Hi, Dean.
You're in the little box tonight, Dean. Oh, look at that.
Good evening, Council.
Oh, and
Just
little
remember
voice
that.
as well.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
We can't.
Quiet. You're there, but quiet.
All right. So adoption of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? Or I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda, unless you've got something to move.
I move that we approve the agenda as is.
I second.
There you have it.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cici.
Yes.
Councilmember, oh my God.
Doug.
Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein.
Yep.
Mayor Peterson.
Yes. No adoptions from closed session because we didn't have one. So it's my great privilege to present our presentation tonight on Microenterprise Home Kitchen Operations, and Amy Arani, Director of Environmental Health, County of Nevada. And I hope her presentation is as entertaining as she is in person. So you're up,
Hopefully
Amy.
not that entertaining, right?
Get all our stuff forward.
On.
Hi, Amy. Welcome.
Thank you. Do I need to turn this on?
It should be on.
Should be
Should
on.
be on.
Let
All
me
right.
get you
My
there.
apologies. Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council members. Thank you so much for making time for me tonight to give you this little informational presentation. I'm going to talk with you about Microenterprise Home Kitchen Operations. This is a pending opportunity that our board is looking at, the county board is looking at, to potentially implement, but right now we're in a discovery phase. So we're seeing if there is an interest in the community and with industry. So what is a microenterprise home kitchen? Well, let me give you the government acronym, because we love those. So we go by MICO, okay? It's essentially a mini restaurant in a private residential home. In 2019, the law enacted through California Retail Food Code, allowing the law to take place where folks can actually operate or get permitted to operate out of a residential home kitchen. However, it does take a local entity such as a city or county to enact an ordinance for that to take place. So within California, just as some background, there are 62 environmental health jurisdictions. And since 2019, of the 62, 14 have created an ordinance and enacted the MICO program within their jurisdiction. That's about 23%. So over 5 years, that's what has occurred. Couple of things about it. There are limitations. Working as opposed to a commercial facility, the MICO operator is limited to 90 meals per week or 30 meals maximum per day, and their revenue needs to remain around $100,000 a year, which they are required to keep receipts for that to show that they're abiding within that. They're also restricted. We have cottage food operations, as you know, that are already permitted in Nevada County. MICO cannot be simultaneously a cottage food operator. You have to be one or the other. You also cannot operate as a caterer out of your home as well. So this is the next slide kind of demonstrates this is what I'm doing. I'm garnering information. We have a survey on our website, which is at mynevadacounty.gov, and you type in Microenterprise Home Kitchen, and it'll take you to the page where you can take a survey, garnering that information. And then I am going to take this information back to our board, likely at the January workshop in 2025, and then get direction from them as to how to proceed. So what's our role? Environmental Health will design the program. We essentially will create the inspection form. I've already created a lot of documents such as FAQs. I've created a standard operating procedure so that it makes it easy on the owner operator to fill out because those are the requirements. We'll permit, inspect, and if needed, enforcement for any kind of inspection violations. And if there is a foodborne illness outbreak, we'd involve public health as well to do the epidemiology side of it. This is basically, the next slide tells you what a MECO operator needs to do to get permitted. They need a standard operating procedure. They need to take food safety training, and they need to adhere to the agreements of their written procedure and local zoning requirements. These are the exemptions, and there are quite a few, but to put it into perspective, generally, a MECO in a residential home kitchen is exempt from majority of the requirements that we have for brick and mortar facilities. Equipment doesn't have to be commercial. The food doesn't have to be separated from the residential home food. Pets are not excluded from the cooking area. There's a myriad of things that we would have to work with the MECO operator to ensure safe food handling. These are more exemptions. All of these are part of requirements for a commercial establishment. So the important thing to bring to you all is that environmental health at the county covers the cities as far as inspections. What's important about this law and why I wanted to bring it to your attention is if the city had its own EH department, should a county adopt the ordinance, the city with its own EH department would have to automatically take part, whether they wanted to or not. In this particular case, we cover all of the county, so there shouldn't be any conflict, I don't think so. Again, with residential zoning, there's a provision in the law that zoning should not change for the residential homeowner. This does not mean that they're not required to get a home occupancy permit like we do with cottage food. There is a home occ permit that they will be required to get. Had a question on whether the city would require them to get a business license. That is definitely up to whatever the city's normal operating procedure is.
Yes, of course. That's the answer.
And then significant to note is that should this program go into play and there are complaints of nuisances or there are violations that they don't adhere to what the MECO requirements are, the city can also take code enforcement action with nuisances.
Nuisance is a bad word here right now.
Okay, so sorry about that. I will. Okay. Yes. Okay. No nuisance allowed. So we do have survey cards. I brought one with me, but folks are definitely can fill these out. We have them at our office, but they have a little QR code, and you can just scan that, or you can just go online at the address, or you can mail in your comments to me, anything you would like. I've got my address up there. But other than that, this is a fact gathering opportunity. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about MECOs and the implications or other.
Council members.
What was the problem that this is meant to solve?
So that's a great question. Thank you. What transpired, this is generally from Southern California, the larger jurisdictions, and essentially the same route the cottage food came into play. Trying to find another mechanism by which folks that have culinary expertise but don't have the financial backing to sink 100 to 300,000 into brick and mortar, give them an opportunity to get into the industry.
Does this cover things like canning, jellies, and stuff like that?
That is an excellent question. Thank you. Canning is not permitted in Amico. Jelly is different. That is covered under cottage food. Okay, there are competing microorganisms that would not cause an illness. Canning is completely different. That's a state. With Micos, you cannot sell oysters or do fish. You also cannot do any kind of special, French cooking like sous vide, which is long-term, kind of cooking for flavor. You also cannot do any type of food preparation that requires a special process. It's called HACCP. I will not get nerdy with you, but that's a special process that they cannot do that in a residential kitchen. Thank you.
What is it they can do? I mean, so I'm trying to differentiate between cottage industry food and Miko food, and I'm not sure why that difference exists.
Thank you, sir. I'll explain that. Cottage, when you think of cottage food, those are all of the foods that are not potentially hazardous. And I'll explain this. The code, the California Retail Food Code, defines potentially hazardous and non-potentially hazardous. A cottage food can only do non, which means there is no temperature or control to hold it safe, meaning refrigeration or hot holding, and the product can be shelf stable or essentially sit on the counter, and no microorganisms will not grow to promulgate a foodborne illness. For Amico, they can do a full-on restaurant meal. In other words, a protein, a side dish, a salad. So that then becomes a potentially hazardous food. And now you're getting into another realm of hot holding, proper cooking, proper sanitation, all of those things that are actually required at a commercial kitchen.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful.
What is the thought that, obviously I see relaxing some of the regulations from a commercial kitchen, but what is the thought that a home kitchen is safer or less likely to have contaminants?
So thank you. Another challenging, excellent question. Thank you. I will tell you that as regulators, we're first and foremost educators. Even in our finest restaurants here, the operators have challenges with turnover and monitoring everything. You have to really be on top of the process, and they're educated. Even in those facilities, we find things that we work with them to educate them, to get them up to par. In a Miko, the challenge will be upon the homeowner, and yes, they are significantly different. They are going to have environments that aren't akin to a commercial kitchen, stainless steel surfaces, commercial equipment that can sanitize, a 3-compartment sink. They'll essentially have a residential 1-compartment sink, and they'll have to implement all of these sanitation measures. The risk here, when you look at it, and public health also has a stand on this, is how do you separate out when a household gets norovirus? How do you protect the food protection in that process? And so all of these things will rely on, clearly, the Miko operator will have to take charge of that. The other caveat to recognize is in commercial facilities, we do an unannounced inspection, and it is absolutely not intended to be a gotcha. It's to watch them while they're doing food prep so that we can help enhance their capabilities. With a Miko, we have to make an appointment. So we make appointment with the operator before we can come to their home to do the inspection. Should we implement this, or it be the board's wish to approve an ordinance, I would ask that our process for inspection would be to request the Miko operator do food prep while we are there, so we can at least observe some activity while they're cooking. So, thank you very much.
That's good. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate your
Absolutely.
presentation very much. Very informative
Thank
and
you.
entertaining.
Thanks so much, Amy.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. You as well.
All right. So we're going to move to a presentation by our city manager on council, commission, committee, and community workshops in October. Busy month.
Yes, briefly, so we can get to the meat of the agenda. At our last meeting, you referred the nuisance ordinance item to the Economic and Community Development Committee, which scheduled a workshop for October 28th right here at City Hall at 6 p.m. To take that up. That is among a myriad of other meetings that we have in October. The October 9th council meeting was canceled, but otherwise we have our regular meeting on October 23rd, the Planning Commission on October 17th, the Public Arts Commission is next Wednesday, October 2nd, Community Services meeting, which is all things parks, courthouse, railroad museum, all kinds of fun stuff, October 1st here at 5:30. That workshop, in addition to the nuisance ordinance, the Economic and Community Development Committee is taking up hearing from the community on the short-term rental ordinance on October 21st. Fire Safety Advisory Committee is going to be moving their meeting to the 24th, which will be a change from their regular meeting on the 17th. So we'll have two meetings in here on the 24th, so check the agenda for which rooms they'll be in. And then as we do monthly, there's Defensible Space Home Hardening Workshop, October 12th, which is across the street from Siemens Lodge, 425A Nimrod Street. So if anybody would like any more information, the box outside will have this posting and all of the agendas posted. All of them are on our website and on social media. And then the defensible space and home hardening activities are listed under our not agenda section, but our meeting section of our calendar as well. So a lot going on next month. And for those that were at the last meeting that had given me their email addresses and wanted to follow up, I will send this off to them as well.
Thank you, Sean. So we are now going to move to public comment. Government Code Section 54954.3 provides any member of the public may address the city council on any matter not on the agenda. And that would include all of the ceasefire issues and associated things that will come later. That is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss items brought forth under public comment, or nor can the council take action on agenda items. Non-agenda items. So go ahead.
I was walking down Commercial Street the other day and noticed that there were planters and benches there, which I remember many months ago there was quite a controversial issue here because it would degrade the historical character of Nevada City or some other bullshit about why we shouldn't have plants. And so I would like to bring back my idea that I proposed at that meeting many months ago, that we should just tear up all of Commercial Street and put a big giant garden there. I can't really think anything wrong with that idea. We all like green spaces. We like food. It would make, I'll be honest, it would make Nevada City the lot cooler of the two cities between Nevada City and Grass Valley if your choices were a plaza or an entire garden that you could walk through. Most people would choose the garden, just saying. So I would say you should really consider just tearing up the whole darn street and putting in a giant garden there. I'll go garden there. I'll plant stuff. I'll water it. Wouldn't even be that much of a burden.
Thank you. Any other public comments on agenda items, non-agenda items? All right. With no further public comment, we will move to the consent agenda, and all items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature, will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. Before we take action on the consent item, we will hear any public comment on consent calendar items only. Any public comment on consent items? All right. Seeing none, I will look for a motion to approve the consent item.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Done. All right. So consideration, item number 4, as we move into the business agenda, consideration of resolution 2024-34, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Nevada City, California, modifying the membership of the Nevada City Fire Safety Advisory Committee, and 2, public notice of vacancy on the Fire Safety Advisory Committee and directing the solicitation of applicants for the vacancy. Take it away, Evan.
Yeah.
It has both your names.
If you like anything, it's Evan. If you don't like it, I wrote it.
I just thought you might be providing oversight.
Well, thank you, Council. This, as the mayor read, is kind of twofold. The first part is to extend the membership of the Fire Safety Advisory Committee to the city sphere of influence, which incorporates 3 different kind of aspects, but it would include those 3 different spheres, which really just highlights the areas near and around Nevada City to encourage stakeholder involvement with that committee. We did fly our vacancies in July. We have had no applicants since then. So this would really increase opportunities for folks that have great fire experience, great perspectives, might have businesses in Nevada City, might just come here to recreate and things like that, but to gain some valuable insight from folks in those sphere of influence boundaries. That's the first part. The second part is to allow us to fly these positions again with that requirement there. So increasing that involvement with folks in the community. Attached in your staff report are the resolutions that want to establish the committee to kind of rechange the formation with a staff liaison and assign 2 council members to that. So those are the attachments on there, but really the real change within this action is to increase the area that folks can apply for this committee on to increase that stakeholder involvement and fly those positions.
And you would be extending the term of the current 4 appointees, because you have 1 vacancy, to the end of the year, December 31st. And then that time we do the recruitment, have the committee's recommendation back to the council at your December meeting, and seat the new or reappointed members at the January meeting.
Okay, thank you. Public comment? Public comment on this? Seeing no public comment, I will bring it back. As is our way, council members would, Councilmember Cece, do you have any?
Do you have a map of what those areas look like?
Not in this staff report. I can provide one to you if you would like it. It really is the immediate periphery of Nevada City. So kind of up by the old airport, coming around the Indian Flat community, and then not too far towards Grass Valley, because we hit those city limits very easily. And then a little bit going towards
Willow Valley.
The east there. Yeah.
So
But it's not significant, really. I mean, it is to increase the involvement from folks
It's
that
significant.
we've had, interest in the past from. I've heard many stories of folks that had interest to be on this committee that live in those areas. So it would really increase those opportunities.
We can put a link in the flyer that we'll put in the box and post on our website to the county's mapping software, so folks could see if they are falling within that area or not.
yes, I think that would be important.
And I just would point out there was a change. We initially set out to look at the 95959 area code, zip code. It's really big, and really big. Goes almost to the ridge, certainly to the river. And though we are actually pleased to offer this outside of the boundary, because as we all know, fire doesn't care about our boundaries. It just cares about what it cares about. But we do want to open up the opportunity for folks just outside of our area to come in and join us if they so desire.
Evan, or it's possible my colleagues on the Fire Safety Advisory Committee can answer this. Was the impetus for this, was it because there was no interest in filling those vacancies from folks within our city proper, or do we suddenly is there someone in one of these areas who would be excellent that we're just like, oh, we really want?
They're still vacant.
I would say both, honestly. Like I said, I've heard interest from folks in the sphere of influence that would serve, a wonderful role on this committee. But then also, we've been struggling to fill these vacancies.
So it's both. Well, it's encouraging to know that there are people who would be a real asset to the city who have previously been unable to help out in that way.
Further context on that, we did have a special category for folks with this committee that was participating members, just to serve this purpose for folks that are just outside city limits, basically.
Cool.
Is there any thought that we're going to annex any of these properties into the city and, increase our.
That's a different topic, right?
I know.
I can't answer that question.
Sphere of influence is for.
Yeah.
Sure, but that's not what's agendized.
I would guess, the only, I haven't heard any plans of annexation. When we have done it, it's been maybe a lot here and there. No grand plans, but that's what it's a LAFCO deal. I sit on LAFCO. It's to show the areas where we might potentially expand the city, should it.
I know a lot of folks on Wet Hill Road that might be interested in that. Evan, thank you so much. I think this is an important expansion. We established the Art Commission this year and decided to have commissioners fall, it be okay that commissioners fall outside of the city. I do think that's important. I do think our sphere of influence is important. I hope folks that are in the audience today and listening at home hear this and maybe become inspired to get engaged in the city in another kind of way, as we do have these openings, and fire is a really important thing to tend to these days. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's the only comment I have. Thank you for that, Councilmember Fernandez. It is the top priority in our strategic plan, fire, and it is another opportunity for you to serve your community should you desire to do so. So with that, I'll be looking for a motion.
I move that we adopt the resolution and receive and file the notice.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cici?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Here,
Councilmember-
yes.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes.
And Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, going to move to item 5, consideration of approving a contract with the California Heritage Indigenous Research Project, Chirp, for fuel clearing along roadways and evacuation routes, and it's the Evans Show again.
Absolutely. This was brought to us from Nevada County Consolidated Fire, and it's from the sounds of it, PG&E was looking to allocate funds for this type of work regardless. We just happened to really have the right time in this space because we had just hired, and as of this week, fuels equipment operator. We have a fuels equipment operator. We hired 2 fuel technicians. So we have the force to do this work. So in our conversations with Nevada County Consolidated and PG&E reps, we kind of were the best entity to actually implement the work. How PG&E likes to fund these projects is through 503s and nonprofits. We've been working with Chirp on our fuels management plans for the Deer Creek watershed. They were pretty much an obvious nexus to be partners for these funds. They've been great on that project, so we decided to offer this extension to them, and they were very graciously accepting of that in our communications with them. So it's for $60,000. They would receive $10,000 for the administrative process, and we would receive $50,000 to implement the work. As the staff report says here, it is for roadside clearing. It's really just 10 feet off the road, 15 feet up, if there's any limbs hanging up. But we've identified about 24 miles of roads that are one way in, one way out, pretty important evacuation routes if there were a wildfire, to conduct this work on. It's, like I said, Chirp, they've been in these meetings with us, and we've been bringing them along with us in this journey. And they are definitely looking forward to this experience because rarely do they get to be kind of the grantors of, delivering funds and developing that skill set. So it is also a bit of capacity building for them. If you were to approve this contract. As you see here, the real scope of work is to maintain free of ladder fuels a minimum of 10 foot wide strip of land beyond the shoulder of the roadway, and then, like I said, 15 feet up of those limbs. Happy to take your questions.
Okay, we'll go public comment first.
Yeah, hi, I just want to say I think this is really great. This is a natural progression of bringing our local indigenous into the governance role that was stolen from them, and I think we should continue to push for them to have a larger and larger role in the way our community is shaped. And I'm really, I am very pleased to see that happening and eventually land back. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo everything that he said. I think it's a good idea to bring Chirp involved into more and more things. There's a lot of things that I think they could be involved in, and I think that land back is very important. And I don't foresee you saying no to this, but I'm saying you should say yes to it.
Hello to everybody. Gerasimos Christopheradis is my name. I am a resident of Woolman Lane. I know Chirp just bought some property back there. I'm not too clear as to exactly what the proposal is and where the property that they are planning to do this work. But I did speak with a couple neighbors, and there was some, not necessarily concern, just interest into figuring out some details as to what this program was like. Some of those people couldn't be here tonight, so I kind of came, not necessarily as a representative, but just to kind of ask some questions and try to get some detail as to what this program is, what it entails, where, et cetera. I don't even know exactly what other questions to ask there, but just kind of interested to learn more about what it is and how it might affect some of the community on Woolman Lane. Thank you.
Do you have a card you want me?
Evan will catch up with you during or after the meeting. He'll give you his card. He's a very he's a very informative young man.
Also, Woolman Lane is not the property we're talking about.
Right. I was going to say it's
That's completely different. I don't know if that's
it's not
appropriate.
affiliated with the Woolman property. It's roadside clearance in a variety of areas throughout the city and the county. So it's not focused on that property. Okay. Comments?
Yeah. If I may, is it Geronimo? Gerasimos. Hi, thanks so much for your concern. I encourage you to reach out to the tribe. It's a tribal entity. It's not a project. They are private buyers, like anybody else, who are buying that land and hoping to inhabit it in some of their original ways. So reach out to them and learn more. I think you might be really interested and hopefully supportive of what they're doing over there. Thank you for this. I agree with Zach. I think, 4 years ago when we started with the land acknowledgement and we said this will not be just words, we will continue to live into this with action. And there have consistently been actions, and it's so amazing to me that, honestly, I was the advocate, hey, the Nisenan, and now I'm not even doing anything, and it's here they come. It's all in the mix. So it's happening, and I'm stoked on that, and I appreciate all the efforts. And also, yay, let's clear some land.
Thank you.
Speaking as the council's representative to the Nisenan, I'm very happy that they will be awarded this contract if we approve it. If you want details about which specific roads are going to be treated in this way, Exhibit 2 in the packet has a map that shows which roads they're going to be treating. About that map, there is a very clear orange lines where the roads are going to be treated, but then there's a kind of vague line for Upper Boulder in Red Dog. Why?
Just a simple mistake. It should be bolded.
It should be as orange as the rest. Okay, that answers my.
We're only doing 5 feet on that road.
Thank you.
Sliver.
Thank you.
Seems like it's all upside. I think it's great. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
Yep, no, I think, we're doing a lot of wonderful things here in involving, our original community members and, working towards fire safety. So, thank you.
Yeah, this is a great nexus, and I have to watch out or I'm going to start becoming grateful to PG&E. Okay, I won't.
And you will, sorry, Mayor, you will see our crews out there. They're dressed a little differently. They wear green pants like forestry wears and some pretty bright yellow neon road safety shirts that say Fuels Crew on the back, designed by Evan and his partner in crime, Camille. Highly visible, but also, identifies who they're and what they do. And then part of the agreement is that we have to be doing a whole bunch of pictures for this. So the befores and afters, so to speak. But so we'll share that on social media and on our website and make that available so you can see what the kind of the transition is with how these roads look now versus how they look when they're hardened. And that really, people aren't thinking about it right now, I know, because even though we're in the middle of fire season season, fall just started. We haven't had a Lahaina this year, thank goodness. We haven't had a Paradise Fire or any of those things. But when you talk about road hardening, you're talking about really the opportunity to escape on that road or survive if you get stuck on that road. And so that 10 feet wide on either side and 15 feet high is incredibly important. And these are all escape routes or evacuation routes identified by the county. So appreciate Evan's work on this and the council's support in getting us here.
I was going to say, yeah, fire season's not over. As some of you know this, as a younger man, I fought forest fires. I can tell you how many times I ate pressed turkey roll on Thanksgiving in fire camp. So it's California, it doesn't end, and it doesn't end anymore. Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve this.
I move we approve this contract.
I second.
Go ahead, Lou.
I second.
First by Vice Mayor Klein, second by Councilmember Cece. Roll call.
Councilmember Cece?
Yes.
Councilmember
Yep.
Fernandez? I'm going to toss you up.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes.
And Mayor Peters?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Going alphabetical.
Yeah, there we go.
Or something. All right. Item number 6, consideration of the purchase of a new Ford F-350 truck from Elk Grove Ford in an amount not to exceed $89,000 for the city's fire fuels mitigation crew. Is that number right? Is that what a truck costs these days? Wow. Evan?
Yeah. Once again, thank you, council. This is my third and last item on your agenda. We have selected this Ford 350 diesel truck really for the unique capabilities that this fire crew to do the roadside clearing and then also just be a self-contained crew with their tools, with their chainsaws, with their chaps, all the things that they would need to just be out there and conduct the work. Currently, we've been having a kind of lend a truck from Public Works as a dump truck to, one, carry tools and carry the green waste. So this will definitely increase our capability to meet the goals of the Fire Safety Advisory Committee's Fire Prevention Mitigation Plan, along with just the strategic initiatives of this council. It was selected to be a diesel with the tool capacity, carrying the tools on the sides, really to cater the needs of this crew. And in the wintertime, also be able to conduct this work, clearing trees in the snow that might be down on roads, clearing those hazardous fuels as well. That's why we kind of moved towards that diesel side with 4x4 capabilities. And just longevity as well. Most of our public works vehicles are diesel and they're still standing and they have more miles than you would like to know. So that was also part of the reasoning behind this specific truck. But happy to, and this specific truck will be catered to the needs of our Safer from Wildfire initiatives with Nevada City, so it will carry the logos of Measure C with the education piece around wildfire prevention. So the QR codes or website to link to get more information and whatnot. And we can also bring this vehicle to public outreach events, towing the equipment that we're using, whether that's the masticator, wood chipper, and things like that. But with that, happy to take any questions.
Okay. Public comment first. Public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the council.
Is the Xbox inside the cab, is that part of the reason that it's gonna, no. No, I think it's just great. The more, I'm just impressed with how quickly you're getting our OES department up and running and staffed and equipped. It's just an amazing thing. Within less than a year, we have a whole new dynamic for fire safety. And I think that, you're a big part of that, and we really appreciate it.
Love fest.
With other areas with large equipment, I'm thinking of the Transportation Commission, going to all electric, why are we not?
There's none available on the market that have the capabilities to do our roads, make it through our winters, carry the equipment that we need. We definitely, would look if there were options, but at this time there are not.
Thank you.
And this is, we do have a fleet electrification plan to comply with the California Air Resources Board mandate. The size of vehicle is not under the current plan for electrification because of what Evan's mentioning. Strangely, there are some much larger vehicles that are, because there are some over-the-road trucks and some buses that are available in an electric configuration. electrification now, but the largest vehicle that's made for essentially commercial duty pickup truck is an F-150. So this is an F-350, significantly larger crew cab. And the biggest part here is it can pull the weight. It has an 18,000 pound towing capacity, can pull the weight of that masticator on the trailer or anything else that we need to do there. We will be, though, putting some electric tools on that vehicle. Not all the tools will be, but certainly the ones that can be and be reliably used, and we're talking about putting a solar panel on there as well to charge battery chargers and doing all the things that we can with this vehicle. But hopefully by the time it gets replaced, it'll be there, but it's not in our electrification plan currently.
Thank you.
This money is set aside for this exact kind of purchase, right? This is
Correct.
Yeah, to just make us better at making us safer.
Correct.
Great.
Over here, do we have any? No. Good. Yeah, they're finally making a real truck with electric. I mean, that we'll see how what is it, 1 year old, 2 years old, the F-150, which is the first like regular pickup truck. I guess you could get a Tesla truck. But
They've had them for a while. Truckee just got one for their police fleet, and so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Not a real truck. Not a real truck. Great. And so it is a six-pack cab, and it is Cummins diesel. Yeah, and it's got the side boxes for tools, so it's a fully rigged.
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll be adding lights and decals in the very near future.
Right. Did what Doug said. Good work. We're moving forward. All right, looking for a motion.
I move that we buy the truck, approve the purchase.
I'll second.
We'll give Doug the second this time.
I'm fine with it. Hey, good job, man.
Thank you. I didn't have to do much.
That was slow on the uptake.
But I'm just trying to spread it around,
Share the wealth.
so to speak, of the truck. All right, cool.
Okay.
Roll call?
Councilmember Cece?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Can I add one thing? Did you mention our event tomorrow night, Thursday, Miners Foundry?
Oh, yeah.
Firewise Mixer, so.
Firewise Mixer, meet the people who are working in our neighborhoods to protect our community.
And that's not the Fire Safe Council, that's the Firewise Community Mixer.
Yes.
Yes.
Our Firewise community.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, we will always, thank you, Evan.
Thanks,
Nice-
Evan.
Nicely done.
Mayor, is that mixer also where people who want to create a Firewise community can come and
Yes.
find out?
It is. It is an educational opportunity, and will feature Evan and his crew doing their piece, a few words from the mayor, and then an interaction between folks who have well-established Firewise communities, engaging with those who are interested, and filling in those gaps. So, thank you. Okay, so do we have our Zoom person?
We don't.
No, not yet. Yeah, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and see where we are.
We're waiting for the consultants to come back.
Yeah, she's not on.
She said 7:15 or so, so it should be in. to reconvene and get started on this topic.
I'm going to meet with her to talk about writing the application so it's easier to implement, so you don't.
Don't make me bang this. Okay, Doug, we're pulling this back.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. All right. So next item, we're going to receive a report from the Consensus Building Institute, findings associated with the beginnings of the community conversation on the topic of Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and the role of local government in providing a safe and peaceful community in consideration of the ongoing human tragedy in Israel and Palestine, in consideration of approving a resolution calling for a ceasefire and an end to the violence between Palestine and Israel. So this is going to work a little different than what we have done in the past, and I just want to give you all a real clear pathway forward and how we're going to have this conversation and talk about it. I am going to kick it off and do a brief introduction. We will then have Dorit, our facilitator, who's up in the corner, will give a presentation on the findings from her interviews and the listening sessions. And then she will remain available for the council only to ask any clarifying questions, if we have any clarifying questions, and then she will sign off. We will then move to public comment after that, and I will have some directions on public comment and how we hope that will work. And then we will come back to the council after your public comments, and you will hear from Daniela and then myself as the leaders of this project, or some participants and leaders of this project, and then we'll hear from the rest of our council members and see where we go. So that's the path forward, and I wanted you to understand that as we moved into it. Good evening, Dorit. So to begin with, in response to the October 27th, 2023 attack on Israel by Hamas and the subsequent response to Gaza by the Israeli government, residents of Nevada City, Grass Valley, and the county have expressed their concerns many times during city council meetings, some advocating for the council to join other municipalities in adopting a Gaza ceasefire resolution. In contrast, others have urged the council to refrain from engaging in geopolitical matters and focus on local governance. The city and its surroundings has also witnessed a rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, contributing to a sense of unease and insecurity among residents. Recognizing the situation's complexity and the need to address the concerns of the entire community, council members have dedicated substantial effort to find an appropriate resolution. In order to facilitate a meaningful dialogue outside the constraints of formal government meetings, as you all have discovered, this is not the place that really is the best place to have those conversations necessarily, but recognizing the council members have dedicated, lost my place there. So council member, then Mayor Fernandez and myself, when vice mayor, proposed a community conversation, discussed the role of local government in maintaining a peaceful and safe community. On March 27th, the council authorized an agreement with the Consensus Building Institute to initiate a community conversation engagement process to inform the council's decision-making on this challenging topic. This initiative aimed to create a safe environment for open dialogue, allowing all perspectives on the issue to be heard and bridging the knowledge gap between the local government's understanding of the situation's impact on the community and the reality on the ground. The outcomes of this process, including the information gathered and the conclusions drawn, will be presented shortly here tonight by our facilitator, Dorit Price-Levine. The council has also received, so the resolution, for nearly 11 months, a group of community members have advocated for the Nevada City Council to pass a resolution for calling for a ceasefire. The council has also received input through many traditional forms of communication, including emails, one-on-one conversations, constituent meetings, phone calls, and in one case, a petition signed by several hundred local businesses and residents. The challenges the council faces in identifying a path forward have been exacerbated by at least two things: the fact that this issue affects various community groups with significantly differing viewpoints and requests, and second, the actions taken by some in their advocacy for a position on the topic have been disruptive and had negative impacts on the community and their sense of safety. Despite the actions of some, however, it is evident that there exists a genuine desire by many community members for their elected officials to speak out against the violence and the atrocities occurring in the conflict. The resolution tonight has several key points. We're looking at an immediate sustained ceasefire, safe return of hostages and prisoners, increased humanitarian assistance, condemnation of discrimination, promotion of civil discourse, expression of sorrow and sympathy, and diplomatic advocacy. These objectives reflect a comprehensive approach to addressing the immediate humanitarian crisis and promoting a peaceful resolution. Despite potential disagreements, the resolution aims to create a pathway for our community to unite in the face of complex geopolitical issues. The information gathered through the interview process and validated during the listening session also indicated a desire from participants to convene a more extensive community conversation to determine how best to usefully engage local government in responding to humanitarian and geopolitical situations that are expected to continue. The mayor, with the resolution is currently being supported by the mayor and myself and Councilmember Fernandez, and with a recommendation to the City Council to adopt the resolution and determine how the community dialogue should continue. That's where we are. That's how we got here. Now we go forward from here, and I'm going to introduce Dorit. And Dorit, if you would share with us the information that you've gathered.
Sure. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Dorit Price-Levine, and I'm a senior consultant with the Consensus Building Institute. My background is in law and mediation and facilitation. I've spent many years specifically thinking about and working on peace building, how to support people to come together across really charged and polarized divides. And I'm also someone who actually comes to this particular topic with a very personal investment, having deep, close relationships with family and friends who have, been in bomb shelters over the last week, and also close relationship with friends who had to drive for 6 hours to get to shelter also in the last week, in 2 very different countries across a very big divide. So I say that to just name that, for me, this is about human suffering and trying to lift up the humanity of everybody, and that includes everybody in Nevada City. So I want to begin by talking a little bit about the process and what we did together. So hopefully you can see my screen. To begin with, I want to talk about the background and the overview of what it is that CBI conducted in Nevada City altogether, which really was about a series of interviews, which culminated then in a conversation where folks had an opportunity to listen to the synthesis of the interviews. And so what I'll present here is that very synthesis that was presented in that listening session and the community conversation that then is what led for a decision from both Gary Peterson and Daniela Fernandez to proceed forward with agendizing the resolution. So there's going to be an opportunity when I'm done presenting, I'm told, if other council members have questions for me. And I'm more than happy to answer them. So the background, and this is something that many of you may be familiar with already, is that so after, of course, the events of October 7th, on October 26th in Nevada City, there were Broad Street Bridge demonstrators and counter demonstrators, and there was some kind of confrontation that took place there. And then on November 8th, there was a public comment push to agendize a ceasefire resolution. In later meetings of City Council, there was different events of vitriolic and hateful rhetoric, including anti-Semitism that came in the form of anonymous calls. There were also assaults that took place in the community, such as spitting, knocking people's property out of their hands. And this was happening really in both directions, from activists, advocates alike. There was one situation where there was a confrontation between a car and a protester. There was strong organizing happening for a ceasefire resolution. The organizing garnered over 300 signatures. At the same time, there were reports of some folks feeling pressured or misled to sign. That came from 3 business owners and residents. So still, well in the hundreds of folks who signed. There were graffiti on signs, a couple buildings, a flagpole, and there was really a sentiment that this kind of tension was countercultural to the relational culture of the city that normally exists in Nevada City. And there were real concerns about further escalation. So all of that led Daniela Fernandez and Gary Peterson to reach out to the Consensus Building Institute in the spring of 2024 for support, for figuring out a way for the community to move forward, to find a way to be responsive to the various demands of community members, and making sure that people could feel safer and return to the usual relational culture. So we engaged in a community outreach process where community members from a range of different communities, including Nevada Coalition, County Coalition for Palestine, including members of the Israeli community in Nevada City, including members of the American Jewish community. Of course, there's some overlap in some of these communities as well. Small business leaders, and then also community members who are generally interested in matters connected to local and international peace. And after the outreach was done, we received 28 responses, and we were able to schedule interviews over Zoom between May and June. Each interview lasted for about 45 minutes. Some of them went over. The interviews were conducted in a very conversational way. We asked the same basic questions and really followed where people wanted to go in the conversation. After that, we synthesized the themes, and we invited everyone who had participated in an interview to attend a listening session where we shared back what the themes were that we heard, and we invited people to share what they were feeling, what they were reflecting on as they heard. So I'll touch on all of those parts now. So the people who we ended up interviewing, the 28 folks, 10 of them were members of the Nevada City Palestine Coalition. 8 of them were Israeli community members. 3 of them were American Jews and non-Jews who identify as supporters of Israel. And 7 of them were local business leaders and community members interested in regional and global peace. Something to note too is that even within the Nevada City Palestine Coalition members, there were overlaps actually with some of these other groups as well. So for the purpose of counting, we just sort of like divided people by what their sort of strongest allegiance was. So for the report back and listening session, we began by sharing what our goals for the conversation would be. We let people know that we were going to be listening to the findings from the interviews. We were going to be reflecting on how we as a community and as individuals were being impacted by what was taking place in Gaza and Israel, reflect on how the community as individuals are being impacted by the political and social climate in Nevada City, and then begin to build muscles for communal conversation. And then the final part was going to be inviting people to share what they would like to see as far as next steps for moving the community towards greater mutual care, respect, and safety. Some of the grounding assumptions that we began with at that listening session were the following. 1, that our life experiences shape our moral commitments and our lens through which we see events taking place, meaning that each one of us, our perspectives, our political commitments, how we walk through the world, each of us, like that is shaped by our own life experiences, things that have happened to us, things that have happened to our friends, our family members, our loved ones, things that we've read, things that we've learned. For some of us, we've had powerful moments of shift or change in our lives. For others of us, we've had moments that have served to really reinforce and validate what we already believed was true and what we learned from our family. So for all of us, that is how we form our political commitments. And that's one of our assumptions that we make, and research demonstrates that. So it's really powerful and effective to start from a place of experience and trying to understand what is the story of the person in front of me? What were the moments that shaped how they feel about things, how they've arrived at the conclusions that they've arrived at? Another assumption is that language is fraught. Even the choice in the listening session of whether I chose to say Israel, or whether I chose to say Palestine, or whether I chose to say Israel-Palestine, or Palestine-Israel. How do I refer to this place? You know, for some people, when they talk about Israel, they're talking about a very specific area. When they talk about Palestine, they're talking about a very specific area that's different. The West Bank and Gaza, for example. For others, when they talk about Israel, maybe they're talking about the entire space. Or for others, maybe when they're talking about Palestine, they're talking about the entire space. Some people prefer to just say Israel-Palestine to refer to everything. So even language is fraught, and people make assumptions about what someone's politics are based on the language they choose. So even there, at the very outset, we had to talk about that. Also, that there's a layered arc of history in the region, specifically in Palestine and Israel, and that this history existed long before October 7th. We also talked about how there can be multiple truths that exist at the same time for different people. Multiple things can be true at once. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not a black and white issue. That's not the world we live in. And finally, that intention does not equal impact, and that both matter, meaning we can't simply just say, well, oh, I didn't intend for that to land in that way. That's not sufficient. We must tend to impact. We must want to know how our language or how our actions are impacting someone else. But impact isn't everything either. Intentions matter as well. And so we also must be curious about what was the person's intention. And maybe they weren't aware of what the impact was. So it's really both. So these were all the grounding assumptions that we came in with. Now I'm going to share, after we went through that, what we shared in the listening session, and this is the synthesis of the stakeholder interviews that we had with those 28 community members. And I will say that, you know, right before I share the synthesis, that there was some really beautiful exchange in the listening session where people actually had an opportunity to check some of their assumptions and to empathize with those who were coming from a different perspective than the one they held. So moving into the synthesis, in the interviews we asked folks, we began by asking very open-ended questions. We wanted to know, what has your experience been like in Nevada City this past year? More specifically, how has in your perspective, is Nevada City being impacted by the violence in Israel and Gaza? And then we also asked people, how have you been impacted personally by what is happening in Nevada City and by what is happening in the Middle East, or both? And people really took us in different directions. For everybody, the answers were unique and their own, but also there were some really strong overlaying themes that emerged. So here's a list of the themes and takeaways, and then I'll get more detailed in a moment. A lot of folks touched on Nevada City's uniqueness. What came out was that there had been, and this won't come as a surprise likely, strong disagreement and polarization between community members, including challenges to personal safety, that people had been deeply impacted by the violence on October 7th and deeply impacted by ensuing violence in Gaza for what was then the past 8 months. That's when the community listening session took place. It's of course been much longer now. And then also really different relationships to the question of whether there should be a ceasefire resolution. We asked a very pointed question about that. For some folks, it felt really urgent. For others, there was a feeling that passing a ceasefire resolution would be incredibly divisive. And then for some, there was a sense that either it was the right sentiment, but maybe it should have a different title, or that it was maybe the right sentiment, but it just wasn't the right forum, that it shouldn't be something that happened at city government. So I'll get into sort of the real sort of texture for each of those reactions when we get into it. And then people also talked about some hurt and disappointment around how city council had responded in general to their constituents' concerns, and that many had felt minimized or disregarded or disrespected. So that was another theme that came up. Okay, so now I'm going to enter into more of the details. So many folks we interviewed In fact, all but one had moved to Nevada City as an adult in pursuit of a better quality of life. People talked about how this is a place that is known for being really liberal, really artistic, close-knit community, and that at the same time, though, that this smaller size also meant that there was a lack of anonymity. And what that meant is that unlike in a large city, in a small place like Nevada City, where people run into each other at the grocery store, rifts and disagreements can be felt much more strongly, and they're felt much more personally. And so this loss of communal cohesion and loss of sense of tolerance towards one another was a real source of pain for many people. In many of the interviews, people broke down crying in tears over loss of personal relationships, whether it was loss of relationships with their children's friends' parents, or people who they had played music with, or people who they had formerly been in various kinds of outdoor gatherings with, who now they couldn't ever interact with anymore. So a huge amount of pain was shared about loss of personal relationships. People talked about that everyone, not everyone, but many people talked about feeling on edge, anxious, isolated, and afraid in response to feeling really marginalized, either personally or that they were being told by their friends that they were feeling that way. Many people felt that there was trauma that had been kicked up. One person, there's a quote, a lot of cultural and ancestral trauma is coming up. It's frightening to see how it gets perpetuated. I see a combination of urgency to react and deeply held feelings about what is right, and questions about who is suffering, who has suffered, who is responsible for it, all of it coming up and bubbling to the surface. Many folks talked about challenges to their own personal safety. Some shared about how there had been a history, actually, of violent extremists coming in from other places to cause division and promote hate, bigotry, and white supremacy in the past. And people were afraid that some of those dynamics might come back in now. Across the spectrum of perspectives, many folks reported being followed to their cars or followed home after council meetings. Folks reported being recorded on each other's phones and sometimes doxxed online. People reported being verbally assaulted or called hateful names in response to their stance on the issue. And this was really on both directions. That's why I'm not naming a particular stance, because I heard that from people really who actually held wildly different perspectives on this issue. Across the spectrum, people were feeling like their safety concerns were not being taken seriously either by city council or by law enforcement. I'm going to read a couple quotes. I've experienced extreme levels of bullying, threatening, intimidation, and have been followed to my car after city council meetings. Eventually, I stopped going because it was emotionally exhausting. The view, we don't suffer, Israelis don't suffer, and if we do, it's our fault. And then another quote, I've been followed and screamed at and told I was a terrorist and should leave town. I had a white American woman tell me I should go back to my own country, tell me I should go back home and get raped and stoned to death. I've been intimidated by the police chiefs threatening me. And then another quote from a person who got really emotional on an interview. I'm scared for my daughter wearing her necklace. And he was referring to a Star of David necklace he'd been talking about that his daughter had. A couple more quotes. It's scary for everyone connected to this issue. It would be scary to be a Muslim American or Arab American. If I were Palestinian, I would also be very afraid. Unfortunately, there's nothing new there. Speaking about the Israeli community, they've been targeted and shouted at. This is a Zionist. We need to ban Zionists from our local places. Israelis are getting shouted at and in some instances spat on for simply speaking Hebrew to their children. Another quote. There was an incident in May in downtown Grass Valley at a May Day event. One attendee had a Palestinian flag and some counter-protesters approached. One was a really big guy who started calling the protesters terrorists, terrorist lovers who support Hamas, and delusional. I was told by a Nevada City resident that I'm anti-Semitic, that I hate Jewish people, and that by simply asking for a ceasefire, I'm spreading Jew hatred in the community. Okay. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm sure that like for many people, I just want people to pay attention to the sort of the somatic experience. I know for me, like it's, this is a lot to take in. So I want to talk about folks in the community who were deeply impacted by the violence on October 7th. For many folks in Nevada City, this is not a theoretical or political question. It's actually deeply personal because there is a community of Israelis who were really connected to people who were violently attacked. And so there was a deep personal loss and immense grief after the attack in southern Israel. Folks grieved about how they had lost family members, loved ones, and also even if it wasn't a deeply personal connection, there was a sentiment that everyone knows someone who knows someone, meaning because it's such a small country that people are connected in that way. And people reflected, particularly from the Israeli community, that this was a chosen community that they'd come to, many to sort of leave the instability and the violence in their home country. And so this loss of sense of safety in their chosen community of Nevada City was compounding the trauma that they were experiencing after October 7th. So I want to read this quote. "The pain I felt after October 7th was the same pain I felt when I lost my father and when I lost my grandmother who raised me. It's that intense level of deep pain and trauma to the body." Another quote, "When October 7th happened, I was blown away. I was shocked by how much it affected me." And that person became emotional. "What human beings are capable of, how horrible it was. We were crying, we lost a friend. My cousin lost her kid's teacher. Everybody knew someone personally. Here in Nevada City, we did prayer gatherings and people would go up and say names of those who were killed or assaulted." Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit to talk about the folks who were feeling deeply impacted by the ongoing violence in Gaza. That was visited upon Palestinians living in Gaza shortly after October 7th through Israeli bombardment. Okay, so people shared about strong expressions of heartache and repeated distress as everyone was accessing these images on phones and news. We all were. So much intensity of witnessing almost live the bombing, the hunger, the starvation, the repeated displacement, and the mass civilian deaths in Gaza. People expressed deep frustration and concern that taxpayer dollars as American citizens were being used by the US government to fund the Israeli military. So there was a lot of folks who shared about feeling directly responsible for the US for needing to do more to protect Palestinian lives as American citizens. So I'm going to read this quote. "I have the luxury of seeing this on my phone through social media, but I'm not the one who's being bombed or digging the graves for my children's bodies. We are the United States of America, and we're directly influencing the events of what's taking place in Gaza. We're supplying the weapons. We're the ones who criticized the ICJ when they put out an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. The power dynamic is so blatant and gut-wrenching that we have to witness tens of thousands of Palestinians being killed. The situation in Gaza with the amount of civilians being killed and the amount of children being killed, having access on the ground pictures and video, how can people get behind that?" And then the interviewee who I was talking to got really emotional and broke down. "Everyone keeps saying Israel-Palestine is so complicated. I don't understand that because they're all human beings. In 1978, I spent 2 months working on a new dam project on the Yarmouk River. I worked side by side with Palestinians and had the opportunity to go into Israel to see how Palestinians were treated. It was bad then, but it's 20 times worse now. These are mothers and fathers, sisters and children, whole families being wiped out. So we're obviously not going to do this now, but I do want to just invite you all who are listening, and I know that many of you came here. I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions about why folks are in the room, but I do want to invite you, if you have the emotional bandwidth or space, to just reflect on what you just heard and think about how community members in Nevada City have been impacted, both those who were deeply impacted personally or emotionally by the violence on October 7th against Israelis in southern Israel, and then the folks who were deeply impacted by the violence against Palestinians for what's nearly a year now in Gaza. And which is not to say that you can only feel that deep pain for one or the other. For many of you, you may be holding that pain for both. I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions about about what it is, but thinking about your fellow community members and reflecting on what it is that they were feeling and holding. I just want to give you an opportunity to just reflect on that a little bit, about what people are sitting with here. And it may be different from what you came in with or what you're sitting with. I'm going to shift into perspectives on a ceasefire resolution. So the first one that I want to talk about is urgency. I'm just going to move through each of the different categories that I mentioned before. So the first one, many folks felt that because Nevada City is such a small community, there's a really strong desire to feel like local government represents the values of its constituents. And even though folks who were feeling like a ceasefire resolution was urgent were not under the illusion that folks in the Middle East were looking to Nevada City for direction, there was a feeling that this is how change works, that it's about little drops in a bucket, where the more people stand up and speak out, that's how you move the needle for justice. There was a sense that as a responsibility, that as American citizens paying taxes, that because the US government is, supporting the Israeli military attacks, that there's a desire to engage government officials who are within reach, and that for many folks in Nevada City, City Council are those government officials who are within reach. Folks shared that because organizers had worked really hard to agendize a resolution for 8 months and collected over 300 individual signatures on 30 local businesses, that really they had sort of done the work to get it on the agenda. And then last, one or two folks shared a concern that the long delay in passing this was serving to embolden folks who were spreading hate and bigotry, and that it was almost signaling that that was okay by delaying it. So these are the perspectives for the folks for whom they felt like passing a ceasefire resolution was urgent. I may not have encapsulated. I think that this is getting at sort of the biggest themes that we heard. For folks who had perspective number two, that it would be divisive, these folks felt that organizers, those organizing on behalf of passing the ceasefire resolution, had engaged in tactics that were deeply dehumanizing, including, interpersonal hostility. And there was a real fear that by agendizing the resolution, it would signal that kind of dehumanizing of people who are of a certain nationality or who speak a certain language is allowed or welcomed in Nevada City. And there was a sense that passing a resolution might shut down potential opportunities for bridging and opening dialogue across community members. When asked in the interviews about what would be particularly problematic in terms of content in the ceasefire resolution, folks generally shared that criticism of Israel was not in and of itself anti-Semitic. but that if the resolution only blamed Israel, given the layered history and the context, that the resolution would feel anti-Semitic. If the focus were only on Israel, that would not feel that it would feel anti-Semitic for folks. So and there was a real doubt about the value of a resolution being a symbol for promoting justice when it had the potential to be so damaging and so marginalizing for members of the community, particularly the Israeli community. So that this was the perspective for folks who felt like a ceasefire resolution would be too divisive and simply not worth pursuing it for that reason. And then there was a group of folks who felt like the idea of a ceasefire resolution called a ceasefire resolution did not sit with them well because of how sort of politicized it had become. And because of the tactics and because of all of that, that it would feel like a win for a particular group and a loss for another group. But that they weren't against the idea of a statement that promoted values that everyone could get behind, such as, you know, the right to live with dignity and safety and security and a range of different things, but that they would prefer that it be called a statement of peace or something else, but just not called a ceasefire resolution. There were strong requests to include language of accountability and safety and protection and peace for both Israeli and Palestinian civilians, that it not just be focused on Palestinian civilians in Gaza or on Palestinians more broadly, but that it include Israelis as well. And there was also a request, if a statement were to be passed, that the statement would acknowledge the division in the community, so that the statement be focused more on the impact on Nevada City than on the geopolitics itself. So these were the folks who felt like, yes, something should be said. We could get behind something being said, but it's just important to us that it either be called something different or that it includes something that includes, you know, concern for both groups, and also real focus on Nevada City and what's been going on in Nevada City. Then there were folks who felt like the forum was the issue. It wasn't really about what was in the statement or what the statement was called, but that even though, yes, some people felt, this group of people felt there should be a ceasefire, but this group of people felt maybe council members, city council is not necessarily the place for it. So some people felt like council members lack the depth of knowledge and training to write a resolution and to take a stance. Some folks felt like it would be more expedient to direct organizing to federal officials, such as congressional representatives who are in charge of making those kinds of decisions. And some folks suggested that maybe there could be some kind of city committee or working group that would address larger community issues, that could listen, brainstorm, and make recommendations, and that it be made up of constituents and citizens rather than in the hands of city council. So those were the range of perspectives on the ceasefire resolution that I shared at the listening session. And then I also shared about perceptions that we heard, the themes around city council members. Folks talked about how the council members appeared not to care about deaths and also appear to take activism personally. I also want to name that there was some beautiful moments in the listening session where city council members shared about what was going on for them. And there was, you know, real, yeah, well, I won't get into what was shared, but just feels important to name that. But people named that behavior included no eye contact, turning attention to phones, reading books, rolling eyes, even laughing at an aside during a painful testimony. Some folks said that they had disregarded the deep canvassing work that had been done, and that, you know, if it had been done on another issue, that this would have been put to a resolution much sooner. Other folks talked about how the allowance for deeply dehumanizing signs during painful personal testimony felt very dehumanizing and disrespectful. and also allowance for very offensive hate speech that was unquestionably anti-Semitic, that this was allowed to be shared by anonymous callers during public comment, which included conspiracy theories about secret power, devil worshiping, and other centuries-old tropes about Jewish people, and that was allowed to just happen, and how deeply problematic that was. So that was shared, and we felt like, you know, it was important to share that out and give council members an opportunity to take accountability, and to, you know, express, you know, what their reactions were to that. And that was able to take place in the listening session. And I think it was able to be heard and received. So then the last part of the interviews included questions about next steps. And I also shared that back at the listening session. So we gave people these 4 different buckets in the questions that they could say, you know, any or none. So we asked people, what do you think would be most valuable for moving forward? One was trainings for all city council members and local elected officials on anti-Arab racism, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism. Another was drafting a resolution calling for an end to the ongoing violence against Gaza and for the safe return of the Israeli hostages. Another was community dialogue workshops that enable non-avoidant and civil communication across differences. And then another was, what about something else? If so, what? And here's what people said. So you can kind of see the percentage breakdown of, you know, who wanted the anti-Arab, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia trainings for city council. You can see numbers of folks who wanted the agendizing of a ceasefire resolution. And then the next one is folks who wanted the drafting and agendizing of some kind of resolution, maybe not calling it a ceasefire resolution, but some kind of community resolution or bilateral statement. That was 71% of the folks interviewed. 75% said that they wanted community dialogue across differences workshops. And then 32% said some kind of other additional workshops. And then there were 8% who talked about shared facilitated grief space, collaborative art projects, other ideas. So here's what this looks like in a bar graph. So you can kind of see where people were in this. Okay. And then we had a group discussion. And in the group discussion in the listening session, we had 2 separate parts. The first one was based on what you learned about the community's needs and preferences, what stood out to you, what are you chewing on? People had an opportunity to share. There was a really nice back and forth and conversation. And then we invited people to use a Mentimeter tool to write in, that's an electronic survey tool, what kind of next steps they would want to see. It was completely open-ended, and folks wrote in who was there, and then we got to see the range of that, came up on the screen, and then we had an opportunity to talk about that as well. So that's what took place in the listening session, and then we told people that the next steps would be by August 31st, they would hear back from Daniela Fernandez and Gary Peterson. They would also be giving the same report back to Grass Valley City Council and Nevada County. And then they would hear what would be decided, whether it was to advance some version of a statement or ceasefire resolution, which is, of course, what ended up happening. It got agendized. Whether they would be organizing a council committee, whether they would organize anti-Arab, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia training, and whether they would be organizing a dialogue across differences workshop. So those were the next steps that did in fact end up happening. And I think that brings us to where we are now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to invite, if there are any questions from any city council members, I'm happy to answer any questions. And then I know if there aren't, then I think we're moving into public comment.
Thank you, Dorit. Council members.
Thank you for your report, very thorough. I have 2 questions. Did any person or group refuse to be part of the stakeholders meetings?
Well, I wouldn't know if they refused. We certainly didn't hear back from some folks who got invitations, and follow-up emails were sent. I don't know if it was because people were refusing to participate in the listening conversation, or if it was just that they were busy or out of town. I don't want to make assumptions about why people weren't there, but I would say that a good number of folks who we interviewed did not end up coming to the listening session.
May I add to that? Just to share a little bit about the process of stakeholders. And so it was never our intention to engage the entire community, but much like you engage people to get a sampling, to collect data and understand what's going on in the community, that's what we did. We would have loved to have interviewed 300 people, but in terms of time and capacity and funding, that just wasn't possible. So really what it was Gary and I coming together and basically harvesting the knowledge and experience and relationships that we had, and that people that were showing up and people that we knew in our communities across differences on this issue. So we did the best to balance those numbers and reach out to people. And like Dorit said, some people responded later and said, oh, I'm sorry, I missed this, it got buried. And then some people, probably didn't respond because they didn't want to, I'm not sure. Most of the people that I had given the contact information for Dorit had been people that I had talked to previously, and or people that had been referred to me by other people that were previously engaged.
Okay, thank you. My second question is kind of the flip of the first, which is, were there any who asked to be part of the stakeholder meetings who were not invited?
There was one person who we brought in after the fact, sort of, who really wanted to be interviewed. Because it felt important to one of the stakeholders that person be interviewed. But other than that, I'm not aware of anybody who wanted to be interviewed who didn't get interviewed. And that person, in fact, was interviewed. So not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
I think you mentioned in your answer to Lou's first question, I believe, and thank you for the work, by the way. Did you say that there were people that you had interviewed for the individual interviews who didn't return for the group listening session?
That's right. Yeah, and that was how I interpreted the first question. I thought it was about, I didn't know if you were asking, I interpreted it as if you were asking if people didn't come to the listening session, not if people chose not to be interviewed in the first place. But yes, that's right. There were people who did not come to the listening session who had been interviewed.
Did they give reasons for that?
No, actually, I didn't hear from anybody who, I was actually surprised that that some folks weren't there.
I did hear a few reasons.
Okay.
I heard a reason, there were a couple concerns of safety, being on a call with people on the opposite side of this issue, and there having previously been an altercation or something. I know there was at least a couple of those. There was a person that wasn't interested and who was afraid that there was a preconceived outcome of this process and didn't want to be this next part if there was a preconceived outcome. This, of course, was an emergent process with no preconceived outcome, but totally respect that person's feeling around that. Those are the ones that I can think of.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Dorit.
so much.
Thank you for the work. It's been, this is hard stuff. It's been great to work with you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Likewise. Thank you, Dorit.
Okay, next I think we will have, Councilmember Fernandez read the resolution.
So the resolution on the agenda and up for the vote is resolution number 2024-33, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Nevada City, California, calling for a ceasefire and an end to the violence between Palestine and Israel. Whereas the City of Nevada City, California stands committed to the universal truth that all human life is precious, no matter a person's faith, ethnicity, culture, ability, or political or religious affiliations, and that every human being deserves to live a life of peace and dignity. And whereas recent and ongoing armed violence against the Palestinian and Israeli people has resulted in tragic loss of life of Palestinians and Israelis and injuries to many more innocent people on all sides. And whereas Palestinians and Israelis both have a right to life, liberty, safety, and security. And whereas there are a growing number of people on all sides of this tragic conflict who are calling for a ceasefire and a new direction, engagement, and negotiations to lead to peace. And whereas the United States government and members of Congress hold immense diplomatic, military, and financial power that could save Palestinian and Israeli lives and seek a lasting peace in our lifetime and for all time. And whereas the continued violence against the Palestinian and Israeli people and the rising anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and bigotry across the United States and the world deeply impact the people in our community in Nevada City, California, many of whom have direct ties to the Israeli and Palestinian region and peoples. And whereas Nevada City, California, with its rich history of advocating for justice and peace, supports the dignity and safety of residents in every community, regardless of what crimes any government may commit, and that peaceful diplomacy and mutual understanding is the only way to achieve these permanent goals. And whereas the City Council is united in protecting Nevada City, California residents against acts of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, as well as against hate crimes towards people of all faiths and religions, including our Arab, Jewish, and Muslim residents. And whereas the City of Nevada City, California recognizes the importance of the First Amendment and the fundamental tenets of respect, dignity, and thoughtful discourse that are hallmarks of this community, upholding the value of our residents expressing and listening to differing opinions and points of view, especially on subjects where there is disagreement. And whereas conflict among ourselves and among our community members can either exacerbate divisions or, if we are willing to engage with one another in difficult and important dialogues, can open doors to opportunities to find solutions that allow us to move forward as one community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of Nevada City, California calls on the California Congressional Delegation to advocate for the following actions with regard to the conflict in Gaza and Israel. 1, call urgently for an immediate and sustained ceasefire and an end to the violence in the region and the safe and immediate return of all hostages and unjustly held prisoners. And 2, immediately increase and ensure the delivery of humanitarian assistance, including fuel, water, food, medical supplies, and medical personnel, which are indispensable for the survival of the civilian population of Gaza. 3, for all parties to fully comply with their obligations under national and international law. Be it further resolved that the City of Nevada City, California condemns all forms of discrimination, including anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and anti-Palestinian and anti-Israeli bigotry. Be it further resolved that on behalf of Nevada City, California, the City Council extends condolences to those in our community who lost loved ones, including children and elderly, in the terrorist attacks on October 7th, 2023 by Hamas. Be it further resolved that the City Council, comprised of leaders of this community, encourages all residents to embody the values of this city by seeking, inviting, and practicing civil discourse, especially when we disagree, to strengthen our ties as a diverse, multicultural, and welcoming community. Be it further resolved that on behalf of Nevada City, California, the City Council expresses profound sorrow over the loss of Palestinian lives, including children and elderly, by the indiscriminate retaliation by the State of Israel. Be it further resolved that upon adoption, the City Clerk shall forward this resolution to the Office of the United States President and the California Congressional Delegation.
Thank you, council member. We're now going to go to public comment. 3 minutes for everybody. Hang on for a second, will you? 3 minutes for everybody. One of the things that we're going to try and get everybody in. Your voices matter. We know there's a lot of disagreement. There continues to be a lot of disagreement. But as we move forward into these comments, I would ask that we give everybody uninterrupted 3 minutes, and that we remember that we're all here together in this community, whether we agree or not, and that what gets said in words matter. So please be as respectful as you possibly can. Thank you. Ms. Gamson.
Hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is it on? Okay. Hello, my name is Diana, and I run a local nonprofit here in Nevada City. And I also was a member of the stakeholder groups, and I probably would be considered a community member that is interested in peace. And I am speaking in support of the resolution. I think it was incredibly beautifully written, very balanced. I think it takes in all of it's a true reflection of the council-approved values. But why I'm really speaking is it's a representation of my values, of how I was raised by my parents and my grandparents, who provided a deep sense of social justice and compassion and encouraged us as children to speak up. And so this resolution is a reflection of how I personally view the situation. And I also think that this sets I'm not naive to think that that this will, change the world, of course, but I think that here in our small community, that this sets an incredibly powerful example for other small jurisdictions that are also grounded in the same values that we are. And that's important to me for where I live, where I work. I'm really grateful for this process and that Nevada City, that our staff, that our council prioritize this discussion. And I have spoken before about the high cost of this contract and this process, and so I really hope that the tools that we used during this experience, that we have gained valuable lessons learned, and that we have a toolbook, a tangible toolbook for continued conversations that may come up, that there's something tangible that our community is left with after this, so that we can use these for future conversations and discussions. So thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
I think you all know what my opinions on this are. So instead of me going on a rant, I'm going to read a poem by Marcellus Williams, who was a black Muslim man who was murdered yesterday by the state of Missouri with the full consent of the Missouri governor and the United States Supreme Court for a crime that he did not commit and that the victim's family and prosecution wanted him to not die for. The poem is called The Perplexing Smiles of the Children of Palestine. Despite the actions of the few, and excessive retaliation, drones, planes, bombs, tanks, rubble, buildings demolished, vanished houses and neighborhoods, hospitals targeted, UN shelters disrespected, murder, death, deliberate killing of non-combatants, babies buried alive, amputations, hunger and political starvation, lack of or no water, strategic sanitation, daily terror and terrorized daily, military maneuvering, moving here and there to return back again to nowhere. Trauma with all its manifestations, international parlays and hesitation, defiance of the realization of two nations, global aid thwarted, global amnesia, siblings and relatives gone forever, parental worries, in the face of apex arrogance and ethnic cleansing by any definition, still your laughter can be heard, and somehow you are able to smile, O resilient children of Palestine. And so I'm going to ask that I use the rest of my minute and 20 seconds to be in silence for Marcellus, who was murdered yesterday, and for all of the children of Palestine, of Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, and all of the other people in the Middle East who have been terrorized for centuries from European imperialism.
Thank you, Josh.
Mikos Fabersoon. Overall, it's simply an aspirational document. It extends condolences to Israelis in the community and expresses sadness about the loss of Palestinian lives, and it encourages civil discourse. But the genocidal siege is far beyond what we should be civil about. We should be indignant. We should be irate. We should be repulsed by what we see going on. We should employ whatever power we have to stop the genocide and end the occupation. It condemns all forms of discrimination, but leaves out Zionism, which is the principal discriminatory doctrine that applies to the occupation of Palestine, the current assault on the Palestinians, and forms the basis for Israel's war of genocide. I've left the clerk information on Zionism, which I've asked her to distribute. And it calls on the California congressional delegation to take several actions, which I won't restate. Again, the objectives are nice as aspirations, but a ceasefire is 11 months overdue, and in that period, Gaza has been nearly destroyed and has become unlivable. The only thing that will stop Israel is an embargo on weapons shipments. U.S. national law is being continually violated, particularly the Leahy law prohibiting the U.S. Departments of State and Defense from providing military assistance to foreign forces, Israel in this case, that violate human rights with impunity. Israel has violated international law, humanitarian law, human rights law, 100 times or more since 1948. The language of the resolution fails to take a position against the forms of violence and atrocities that have been employed. It fails to call out the perpetrators of the violence, the State of Israel and the United States government in particular, who for the past 11 months have been conducting or enabling the genocidal atrocities. It ignores the actions of the International Court of Justice, imploring Israel to stop its actions constituting genocide, and ignores the indictments issued by the International Criminal Court against Israeli cabinet ministers, and the Hamas leadership for war crimes and crimes against humanity. It contains no context about the circumstances and the principal factors that led up to October 7th, the total blockade by Israel of Gaza's borders since 2005, Israel's Operation Cast Lead, the bombardment of Gaza in 2008, and Operation Protective Edge in 2014, where several thousand lives lost. It fails to acknowledge that under international law, Palestinians have the right to arm resistance. And it totally ignores the big picture, the 75-year history of the belligerent occupation by the state.
Thank you.
All right, here we are. It's been very long and difficult to get here. So I just want to focus on one part of this proposed resolution, and that's point 3 of what we are calling on the Congress to advocate for, and that is for all parties to fully comply with their obligations under national and international law. This is extremely serious, and I just think it's really important that we do not delude ourselves into what these words actually mean. More laws have been broken during this genocide than I have time to list. Nationally, Section 362 of Title 10 prohibits the funding of any training, equipment, or any assistance of any kind to a foreign security force if there is credible information that that has committed gross violations of human rights. It has been well documented that has been going on. It's indisputable at this point. Furthermore, so basically what that line is saying is this resolution is advocating for an immediate embargo. That's what that line means. Furthermore, internationally, Israel and the United States have broken numerous humanitarian laws, human rights laws, and international criminal laws, just a few of which being genocide, torture, apartheid, disappearance, starvation as a weapon of war, sexual violence as a means of torture, intentional targeting of civilians, and on and on and on. When we call for all parties to fully comply with their obligations under national and international law, that means something. It doesn't mean we just hope they can please stop breaking the law now. It means that there will be an investigation. It means that there will be court. There will be punishments. There will be consequences for people who are found guilty of these crimes. And that includes Netanyahu, Gallant, Smotrich, many soldiers and administrators in the Israeli government. That means Biden, Harris, Austin, Blinken, Kirby, Burns, many others in the DOD, and the State Department, and others in the U.S. administration. I think it is very good thing to be calling for all criminals and perpetrators of crimes against humanity to be tried. But I don't think we should call for these things unless we mean it. This is not just language. If we call for them and don't mean it, then these words lose meaning. Our international laws lose meaning. Our humanity loses meaning. So I'm glad to see this language in here, but I want to really highlight that it has meaning. If we want international law to be upheld, like we're saying we do, there are consequences that follow that calling, and I think we should hold people accountable for the crimes they commit. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Hello. It's been a long time coming with this, and though I'm grateful we finally arrived here, I'm quite disappointed that the word genocide is not anywhere in the resolution. I feel like that is like a kind of major flaw with this resolution. I don't even know. That presentation I'm still kind of processing. I just want to state that whatever graffiti or hate crimes that were committed is not affiliated with the coalition. And I'm really disheartened and saddened that anytime someone thinks that genocide is bad, that we are labeled as anti-Semitic, or if anyone does anything anti-Semitic, it's like reflected on people who are saying that genocide is bad. And I really just want that to be known, that we are not involved in any type of graffiti or anti-Semitic actions. And I do want it to be known that this individual spat on us. He did. He hawked loogies and spat on us repeatedly right before this meeting, which I believe is a hate crime. So anyway, that happened, and that's really unfortunate. I really hope that we can edit this resolution to include the word genocide and an arms embargo, which are things we have been requesting since day one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Melissa. I wholeheartedly echo the sentiments of everyone who spoke before me. I have an extensive background in social work, education, and writing, so language is of a lot of importance to me. It is internationally recognized that what is occurring is a genocide against the Palestinian people. Your mediator says language is fraught. Yes, using dismissive and passive both sides language during a genocidal campaign is hard to stomach, and of course the words we choose matter.
Excuse me, we're not going to have any disruptions.
Hold the time.
Hold the time, please. If you cannot, please contain yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. We ready? The words we choose to use matter. If I were supporting a survivor of domestic violence but refused to acknowledge or name the abuse they suffered or the context under which they suffered it, I would be undermining their healing and their experience. The council recognizes that it is on stolen Nisenan land, and you are proud to exclaim that you spearheaded such a just and delayed change. This council understands the importance of using the correct language. It would require great cognitive dissonance for the council to pride themselves in recognizing any indigenous land which was stolen through genocide, and yet deny the genocide unfolding before us against the indigenous people of Palestine. The international community recognizes that the 10 stages of genocide are well underway and well documented against Palestinians. It will be an unfathomable tragedy and embarrassment for those who fail to acknowledge a genocide in real time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shirley Osgood from Grass Valley. Is it working? I think I got left out of the process. I've been to 24 meetings in Grass Valley in the last year, about 5 Board of Supervisors, and only 3 or 4 here because I had a conflict on Wednesday nights. But that's no big deal. But anyway, I did want to talk about a couple of things. When I was in high school during Vietnam, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember that, but anyway, I think Robert McNamara was the Secretary of Defense, and later he did a movie called The Fog of War. And I remember in that movie talking about proportionality in relationship to how we behaved in Vietnam. Proportionality is when you go way overboard with the response. So let's say you have 1,200 people killed and then you kill 100,000 in response. Anyway, I think that's kind of tied in with what people are talking about when they say to use the word genocide. It's a way, way overboard response and clearly meets the definition of genocide. I do appreciate all the work that you've done on this and your patience in people coming every 2 weeks to hear, to speak out. I do appreciate that, and some of what you have written there is, excellent. But I would like to see the word genocide somehow acknowledging the proportionality of what's been going on. And I also want to mention, I don't know if anyone has mentioned to you this, I haven't heard it anywhere else, but the Gaza Strip is a major migration route for migrating birds between Europe and Africa. Their habitat, their nesting, their food, everything's been wiped out. And I think it was number 2 where you talked about people have the right to live. I happen to believe that all creatures have the right to live. And what's been happening over there has not just happened to human beings. It's happened to the migrating birds, to the wildlife that are native there, the Egyptian mongoose. They have bats there, other creatures that we may not see as often. They had farms of animals which were wiped out, that people were, raising as their livelihood. And then the domesticated animals, what's happened to them. So I just want to add that in. And thank you for doing what you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Caridi from Grass Valley, and I wanted to thank you for the process that you engaged in with having the mediator who spoke interview people from the community. And I think that's a real worthwhile thing, and I do hope that there will be some follow-up with some way to bring people together. I think that's the crux of what we need to do as a community is to be able to hear each other. I was just spat at. I've been spat at multiple times just standing and waving a flag. And there's such a strong feeling of hatred that comes towards me when that happens. And I think that only comes from fear. And there's a fear of genocide that feels so big to, and anti-Semitism that is so big that it actually crowds out the view that there really is a genocide happening. And I don't know what to say about that. I do hope that genocide gets added in and to the resolution, that word is there, because I think it's important in the UN General Assembly, and the ICJ also seem to think it's important. And just because because there's been so much misinformation or lack of information about what's going on, you have to go to social media to really see what's happening. That and that we have the Secretary of State lying. I don't know what to say about reports that he's gotten about humanitarian aid not going to Gaza. I just feel like there's a systemic, we're working on it day and night, that doesn't seem to mean anything anymore. And so to have something, to use the word genocide to talk about, what the UN talks about, which is embargoes, and ending trade, ending relations until something stops. I think that's the kind of thing that we need to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sharon Delgado, Nevada City. I'm also with Earth Justice Ministries. And it was quite the presentation. And I was actually surprised that it was so engaging. And I'm a latecomer to this, to being here at these meetings. I really appreciate all the work, that you've put into it, but also that all the other people have put into it and have organized and pressured with all the passion they have about this issue. And I feel that passion too. So I really thought that the report, it was heartrending really to hear what's been going on in the community with the anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian expressions and spitting and all of that. So, and I appreciated how that report humanized both sides in our community and how people are feeling. And I was surprised really with the resolution. As I was listening to all the whereases, I thought, Palestine and Israel, or Israel and Palestine, and it was all so equal. But then, and the proportionality is what people have talked about. That's what was bothering me about that. But then when it got down to the actual resolution itself, after the whereases, then it got down to about the October 7th attacks. But then it moved on, and it also talked about the indiscriminate, it didn't say genocide, which I agree, it sure does look like a genocide to me, but it did say the indiscriminate killing of people. But genocide, why else bomb schools and hospitals and starve people deliberately? And, the first 14 pages of the list of the victims are babies. That sounds like genocide to me. And I do agree with the other criticisms of the report and of the actual resolution, which is that it doesn't talk about an arms embargo, and especially the refusal of the United States to send arms to Israel. That's when I see a wounded child or a starving, orphan, terrified child in the rubble. I think of my complicity, or my government's complicity, my complicity. So, it's like I'm not doing enough. I don't know that, but I'm glad I'm here tonight, and I really appreciate it. I have a friend in Alameda who's waiting for the outcome of this. This is an important step. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Good evening again. Gerasimos Christoforatos, Nevada City. I am for passing this resolution. I would like to applaud and commend all those individuals involved, all those who had a role to play in bringing this conversation to life. We need more of this dialogue. This is how we work through our differences and find middle ground. In disagreements, we all have to give a little to gain a lot. I do not envy any of you for having to decide on what direction to take this discussion. It is a difficult matter, so I commend you for taking this matter up. Trying to please two sides is never easy, and there will always be someone who feels like they might have lost something. I know how difficult this could be to please both sides of this agenda. In your responsibility to come to some form of conclusion on certain types of agenda items like this one, you will leave some feeling like they have lost. It is a difficult decision. Without conversation about our differences, I believe they can destroy relationships. I have seen this happen with dear friends over different opinions, ideologies, perspectives on this particular agenda. Old friendships lost over emotions, possibly forever. It's innocent life that pays the burden in any war. Those who lack the resources to change their life at the drop of a dime to bring themselves and their families into safety and comfort. So again, just thank you for taking this matter up.
Thank you.
Hello. I cannot believe we're finally here either. I feel like everyone has been saying that. It feels like a congratulations. I want to thank you guys for following through with the process that you committed to. Though we have had disagreements about the process, I do appreciate the follow through and do appreciate the ability to talk about this on an agendized item. So thank you for that. In response to the transparency stakeholder thing, my concern is that it's just not equitable because it limits it to then the people that you and Gary know. So if you guys don't have direct connections to the Arab American community per se, then those people would not have been involved in this process at all. And that's like without even like personal bias about individuals. So that is like been one of my concerns with this process, and that kind of trickles down into this resolution. Though I'm in favor of the ceasefire resolution, I believe that I would like the council to push it until next week because I believe that it needs community input on the language. I think that it's fair that the community, any stakeholders should be able to submit language so that it's a document that we helped write together. Our coalition has a resolution, and I feel like that is language that I would like to advocate for. So I think that it's important in workshopping this document that we have a chance, we as in everyone in this room have a chance to contribute to it. I have several edits about the document. I don't really feel like I need to like list those out and do that whole thing with you, but I do have edits and I would like to work on the document. And I feel like there's an issue with the communication channel between me, I'll speak for myself, between me and the council. I feel like I cannot communicate anger or frustration because it's taken as a personal attack, and then it's like defensive. When I spoke at the last meeting I attended, I spoke about being unhoused and was emotional, seeking clarity about if the Supreme Court decision that is now back in play was going to be enacted locally. Like, that scares me. And the response was, there's like 5 or 10 or like 25 unhoused people here. We know them all. Like, that was really dismissive and super disrespectful and pretty ableist to me. And I would love the council to take anti-Islam training or anti-Islamophobia training, anti-Semitism training, but also I feel like ableism training and communication skills, because we got to learn how to talk to each other. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the one who yells at us.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Shirley, and I've been a resident of Nevada City for the past decade. And I just want to address what someone else said, that it's totally true that calling for a ceasefire is not anti-Semitic, which is why I didn't oppose this process initially. I didn't understand the point of it, and I honestly still don't. But once I saw that anti-Semitism, hate speech, personal attacks, et cetera. I couldn't sit back, and that's when I started getting involved. I do want to extend gratitude to you all for this process and for taking into account some of our concerns as the Jewish community, although I would also have some edits, if possible, to submit. And then I also just want to speak to this community. I think one of the most beautiful things about this community is the diversity of political opinion. And it creates much needed checks and balances that are desperately needed. During the 10 years that I've lived here, I have been changed in many ways. And that takes some curiosity, respect, and also to know when to defer to people who have more expertise on a particular issue. The amount of disinformation that has been spoken in this room with such confidence over the past many months is astounding. I'm truly amazed that after the past few years, people haven't realized that we need to be really humble in understanding that there's so much we don't know and we're manipulated so expertly. So I hear everyone understanding that this resolution is purely symbolic. I don't understand why there was so much hatred during the process. I have a master's degree in conflict resolution from an Israeli university where I studied with Palestinian lawyers and UNRWA workers. And one of the biggest things that I learned is that the means are the ends. What has happened here, aside from this last process, is not how we work for a better world. And by the way, I just want to say that's my partner who was spitting out his mouthwash as we got out of the car, and he's a Native man who's on that fire crew, but let's just keep talking about land back, right? He spit on us multiple times, but no, he didn't.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is John Paul. I live in Nevada City. I've been here a long time. I'm also a member of Rotary, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But I want to say that I applaud the council for this process, especially Councilmember Fernandez and Peterson for carrying us through this as a community. I think the conversation was good. I was part of this process. It was frustrating, it was exhilarating, it was sad, it was disheartening, and it was great that we could come to a document like this that is a drop in the bucket, but it also says something about who we are as a city. So I applaud the council for drafting this. It is very eloquent. All the right pieces are in there. All the right words, or all the words everybody wants specifically in there aren't. They're not going to be, because that would require another book or another document. And I hope people can, address their Congress members in that way so they hear their voices about this issue, because it is a national issue. I also want to say that Rotary's focus is peace in the world. And so peace in the world is this communication and this dialogue and this ability to talk with each other. I'm in an international organization that is in every country in the world. We are not religious. We are not political. We put all those to the side and work together for the greater good. And I hope that everyone in this room can see that is the intent of all of this in the end, is that we do work together for the greater good. So thank you, City Council. Great work, and go forward.
Thank you, John Paul.
Hi, I'm Noga Wazansky, a Jewish Israeli-American resident of the county. I stand in solidarity with Palestinians in their struggle to survive the genocide Israel and the U.S. are perpetrating in Gaza and the slaughter and ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, and now also with Lebanese civilians whom Israel's terrorist attacks are killing and maiming. My Jewish ethics and my lived connection to Israel compel me to take this position. I see the effort that went into writing the ceasefire resolution, and I'm glad we've reached this point, and I want you to vote to pass it. But I have some concerns that I also want to share with you. I'm glad the Council decided not to invoke the tired claim that Israel's actions stem from its right to defend itself, because of course one can't claim self-defense against a population you have occupied and brutalized for 75 years. Thank you for not going there. But I am upset that with language that labels Hamas's attack terrorism while stating that Israel simply retaliated indiscriminately, which is an astonishing euphemism for the level of carnage that Israel has wreaked. The resolution frames the past year as if history began on October 7th, as if Hamas's violent attack was not itself committed in the context of 75 years of Israeli occupation and state terror against Palestinians. I think we can do better on this reality. I also urge you to find a more accurate way than indiscriminate retaliation of describing Israeli violence that has destroyed an entire society with an official death count of more than 40,000 people, a projected death count of over 200,000, knowingly induced mass sickness, maiming, deliberate starvation, death by curable diseases and infections, the deliberate murder of journalists, educators, healthcare workers, and children, the evidenced torture and rape of civilian detainees in Israeli prisons. I'm sorry about, I see that you refrained from naming the genocide, and even if, as I'm sorry about that, I still think that we can together find words that describe the reality more honestly. Finally, I appreciate the line in the resolution referring to the power of the US government to intervene, and yet our leaders can't in good faith claim to work for a ceasefire while sending a continuous flow of bombs and other lethal arms to the party perpetrating the violence. This resolution would be more honest if it were to acknowledge that while giving lip service to a ceasefire, our administration continues fueling and arming this expanding genocide. I'm losing time, so I ask that we move beyond abstract aspirations and add a call for the arms embargo that will actually stop the killing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. First, I just want to say I am grateful for the time and effort the council put into this resolution. And I'm incredibly grateful to the community members that spent countless hours on heartfelt and compelling statements, sitting through many, many council meetings over this last year and participating in the CBI process and soliciting signatures from the community for support in urging our city to stand against the US-Israel genocide of Palestinians. And unfortunately, that is one word that is missing from the ceasefire resolution. A lot of ups and downs reading the resolution as it ignores history, some history, and aims to appease those that oppose an end to the genocide. Also missing, as others have said, is the lack of an arms embargo and to demand a stop to using tax dollars to provide weapons of mass destruction. Being against a ceasefire at this point makes no sense if you have a shred of humanity. The typical justification for the endless slaughter of civilians is Hamas and human shields. It's dismissive and dehumanizing. I actually felt that word got quite overused in that presentation because I've never witnessed anything more dehumanizing than what has been happening for this last year. It's racist and Islamophobic. And excusing it erodes our humanity as a whole and sets the path for an even more cruel and sick future. There's no scenario in which terrorizing, starving, and bombing an entire population, half of them children, is acceptable. But I do want to leave on a positive note and just say that I do hope that this resolution passes. I appreciate the time from everybody in this room, in the community. It has brought me to know a lot more people in this community, and I appreciate it that much more. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. I'd like to start by thanking all of you for all the hours that you didn't spend with your families because you were dealing with this issue. And I know that all of you have put in a lot of time to make this happen. So Dorit's presentation was, there are a couple of things missing, I thought. One was equivalency. For instance, on October 7th, there was one Israeli infant killed, but there are 14 pages of infants who've been killed by the response. She didn't mention that as bad as October 7th was, and as atrocious, it was, there were 500 such incidents in 1948 alone that were not mentioned. But my main point here is that there's the concept of a ceasefire is almost irrelevant now. Everybody wants a ceasefire. Biden, Harris, Blinken, but they can't get Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire. He can't agree to a ceasefire for his own personal reasons, and also because the Israeli government is now controlled by Kahanists. And I don't know if you know who they are, the Jewish Defense League. But my high school girlfriend, Sharon Lipschitz, her parents were Kahanists, and I can tell you what they wanted. They wanted to rid greater Israel, the ancient land of Israel, of Arabs, and so that they would never be able to outvote the Jewish population. And for that reason, they will never agree to a ceasefire. The only thing we can do to move a ceasefire along is to have the weapons embargo, refuse to send them the weapons to be carrying out the ethnic cleansing and genocide that they are carrying out. I want to speak to anti-Semitism as well. Anti-Semitism, it takes a lot of forms, but the one that affects me the most as a Jew is that for the next 50 years, I and my descendants are going to have to explain that what Israel did to the Palestinians was not a Jewish thing. And I know there are people in this room who are opposed to a weapons embargo, opposed to a ceasefire resolution, and I don't think they're bad people. I think they're just being
Jeffrey.
Confused by the propaganda.
Thank you. Go ahead and pull the mic down. There we go. Thank you.
I'm from Israel, married to a husband with native ties to this country. Since October last year, my family and friends are displaced from their homes while rockets from Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis, and now Iran, are bombarding my country. My friends have children still being held as hostages in terror tunnels under Gaza. Do you think your resolution would make these terrorists give back the hostages and stop bombing my family and friends? As I've said already back in December, the effects of your decision would have great impact on our community, though no impact on the decision makers in the Middle East, and so it is. A $30,000 of the city money invested in a ceasefire resolution that leaves quite literally no one happy and ignite further rage amongst the community. Many in our Jewish and Israeli local community feel that this process was done in a way that was not transparent and meant to avoid taking in the full feedback of our community, which makes it not represent the divide that exists here. This group that has inspired this resolution seems to care a lot about Palestine, but they are also promoting anti-Israel rhetorics excessively. To them, Free Palestine means the complete destruction of our Jewish sovereign legal state of Israel. They wouldn't even call it in its name and constantly refer to it as occupied Palestine or Israel. This is a big factor of the ongoing propaganda to put us down, rewrite our history, suggest personal opinions as facts, and drill in to the less educated that Israel is a make-believe, not real, a terrorist state with Israelis that deserves the violence and brutality, and at best should go back to Europe, a place Jews never ever belonged to, ignoring the 65% of Israelis who are people of color and whom ancestors were chased out of Israel, Judea, to diaspora in Arab countries, and a life of persecution and brutalities, and some were chased out of a life of diaspora in Europe, a life that for 6 million of us ended in the gas chambers. We weren't European enough for Hitler back then, but we are all of a sudden European enough for these folks. I guess our belonging depends on the narrative and the flavor of the century, depending on who hates us. Why is Nevada City writing a ceasefire resolution in Gaza, one that doesn't mention the 8,700 missiles that Hezbollah has fired at Israel, or the over 20,000 missiles fired by Hamas, or the missiles fired by the Houthis of Yemen and now Iraq? The Nevada County Coalition for Palestine refuses to acknowledge that Hamas is a terrorist organization that is not only attacking Israel and holding hostages, but oppressing the Palestinian people. Supporting the propaganda is not promoting peace or reconciliation.
Thank you for your comments.
My name's Don Fraser. I'm a resident of Nevada City. I'd like to start off by thanking Mayor Peterson and former Mayor Councilwoman Fernandez for all the work that they've put into facilitating a community dialogue that results in the presentation of a formal ceasefire resolution. Thank you. Well, I feel that the resolution as presented could cover so much more. For instance, it could contain the words genocide and ethnic cleansing, both of which are taking place in Gaza and the West Bank. The resolution could apply the word terrorism, addressing an air war and continuous bombardment of a civilian population with no air defense system. The resolution could condemn the daily eviction of Palestinians from their homes and land by Israeli settlers, supported by Israeli military and police. While it could contain all of these and much more, I do believe it is a good start. I believe that this resolution notifies the U.S. government that we are paying attention, that we want more to be done to stop the slaughter. As an aside, Congress is considering $20 billion in further support for the government of Israel. Now, I'm not good at math, but I believe that would purchase 224,000 of those crew trucks that you approved the purchase of tonight in item 6. I wonder how many beds, tents, and meals that would buy. In light of what is happening in Lebanon, I would like to suggest an amendment to the resolution calling for a complete arms embargo for the entire region. I very much support a ceasefire resolution that calls for a cessation of shipments of American arms and munition to any and all belligerents in the current conflict, including the State of Israel. And I thank you again for your efforts.
Thank you, Don.
My name is Yael. This is my first city council meeting, actually. I've been part of the process, but I just want to say that there are always going to be, I feel like, a lot of opinions, and everybody's going to be biased, and everybody's going to get their information or misinformation from any number of sources. And I feel like anyone is going to search for the information that is going to support their story and their opinions, and those are all going to be based on their experiences, their traumas, whatever they're based on and whatever they want to believe. And I think you guys have actually done a fine job in what you've written here. And I'm sure this has just been crazy, everything that has been thrown at your table. And there's a lot of energy behind all of it. And everyone's biased, and everybody is going to think something different, and everybody's going to force something different based on what they believe and what they want. And yeah, and it all comes from a different place. And again, I think you guys have done a fine job.
Thank you very much. All right.
Hi, I'm a resident. I used to be on 219 Grove Street. Now I'm over in Cement Hill. First question to the council is, why is Grass Valley and Nevada County not participating? I think in part, their not participating is a statement in and of itself. Second, I have a lot of complaints about the resolution. We went from should the council buy a Ford truck to a resolution about a country in the Middle East that's a third the size of the Navajo reservation in America. It's like, why are we making a international resolution? And I'm not a fan of that being a precedent of the resolution itself. I'm just going to pick one thing. I have a lot of issues with it, but the resolution implies that Israel is blocking aid and food to Palestinians by calling for an immediate increase, which it sounds nice on the surface, but that would be like Paris making a resolution that Americans should stop eating cats and dogs. It's implying that we are. It's implying that Israel is. Various media has claimed there's an impending famine in Gaza since November of last year. Online, you can see the UN official humanitarian affairs, OCHA, with UNRWA's own statistics of how much food and supplies is entering Gaza each day. There's no starving except hostages that Hamas is holding. There are falsely attributed propaganda images of starving children in Yemen that was done by the Houthis, who are now bombing Israel. There's images of Syrian children starving that were starved by Hezbollah, who's now bombing Israel. But there's no starving children, according to the IPC Global Famine Review Committee, who is the authority on this, not Nevada City people who, through their social media, believe something. The Nevada City resolution is supporting, in my opinion, a propaganda war that is manipulating social justice language. You can go to YouTube and search, and you can see markets this week in Gaza with all the food in it. I saw a recent one, a guy's like, what you can buy for $10, and he went through the market, and there was plenty of food. There's 2 million people in Gaza with stocked warehouses that have iPhones to capture every single detail of what's happening there. And at this moment right now, there's 26 million people starving in Sudan that we're not caring about.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
Hello. My name is Liz, and I'm a Nevada County resident, and I am finally not here to ask for a ceasefire resolution to be put on the agenda. I want to start off by saying thank you. I've been asking for months for a ceasefire resolution to be on the agenda, and it's finally here. And I know you guys worked incredibly hard, and I know that you guys worked very hard on being very even-handed. And I appreciate the wording that you used in a lot of instances. Is it perfect for me? No, but I didn't really expect it to be. I think that if I could request an amendment like someone else did, it would be the arms embargo. It is important to not only ask for a ceasefire resolution, but also ask for action. How do we get a ceasefire resolution with an arms embargo? We are providing 65% of all of the weapons provided to Israel. We are also giving them billions to fund this genocide. If we were to cut off funding and if we were to cut off weapons, this would end very quickly. I don't know how to address some of the other things that have been said today about this not really happening, this not really being a genocide, people are not really starving or suffering, or it's all propaganda. I don't know how to speak humanity into monsters. This is very real. Many of us know people who are in the Middle East, and I appreciate you guys, again, for saying the things that you have said and are attempting to listen to your constituents. So, yeah, I think that's it. I just ran out of things to say now. So, yeah, I guess I'll just waste my time. I'm just gonna keep going because you know, this will probably be my last time up here for a while.
We're gonna miss you.
Huh?
We're gonna miss you.
I'll be around. I've got other missions, but yeah, I hope that this passes. I hope that somehow you guys can fit an arms embargo in there. But even so, I hope that this passes, and I want to say thank you. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, we're going to bring it back to the council. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your respect and the dignity you afford each other. It matters a lot. I'm going to first go, as is our way, we will go to the two people who, we have our mini chairs where we all have two council members on them, and Councilmember Fernandez and I were on this, and we allow those folks to speak first because they bring more content that the other council members can then deliberate on. So Councilmember Fernandez, please.
Shit. This has been in true Daniela form, I'm going to say a fucking year. And not just globally, but here in this community and also here in this room. The year I spent as mayor was really challenging for me personally and professionally in this role. It stretched me in ways that I couldn't have imagined. It allowed me to expand and include more capacity for nuance and multiple pieces of a whole. And it also broke me in some ways. I lost relationships. I lost relationships with people who have been in this room. That sucks. And it's been very clear to me, you know, I am a person, for anybody who knows me, for anybody who's following me, you know, for the last 4 years in this role, I am a person who is not afraid to speak truth to justice as I know it, right? And what I know is, in a lot of ways, the history of oppressed people in this country. It is easy for me to stand up for Black lives, for LGBTQ rights, for women's rights, for Native, Indigenous rights in this country, because I know well my country's history on this land and movements based here. When this happened on October 7th, admittedly, I didn't know much about the conflict in Palestine and Israel. And I know a lot of people were really disappointed at me for not saying the things that you wanted me to say. And to that I say, too bad. I'm not here to say the things other people want me to say, and I don't speak to things that I don't know. With that being said, in this last year, I've done my best to learn a lot. I've read books, I've watched documentaries, I've listened to podcasts, I've engaged in conversations with my friends, my family, community members on all sides of this issue. And there's still a lot that I can't answer. And I can hold an ideology about what I think is happening and what is morally right and what is morally wrong over there, and how this country is participating in what is happening over there. But my role here in this room is about what happens here, right? And so for me, this resolution that we created, this is not my resolution. This is not the resolution Daniela would write. This is not a resolution for the people of Gaza. This is not a resolution for the people in Israel. This is a resolution that is an outcome of a process that we were tasked with by this council to engage in to understand the experiences and the needs of this community. This covers a lot of ground because it was intentionally and carefully crafted by Mayor Peterson and myself. And for some of you, it doesn't say enough, I understand that. And for some of you, it goes too far. I understand that. I believe what we have done is crafted a resolution that encompasses a lot of varying experiences and politics and needs on this issue. We weren't focused on history. We weren't focused on truths as people may know them. We were focused on this community, how it's affected, and how we can best represent all of this community. Now that's ridiculous. We can't represent all of this community because at that point, most people aren't going to be happy, but we've done our best. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that.
Thank you, council member. Appreciate your comments very much. So how do you lead into something that you know, the parlance would be, in political circles, the parlance would be, this is a loser. We know that when we stepped into this, we are not going to please hardly anyone. We know that we have an entire community to represent. And though we have experienced a lot from the folks who have attended our meeting, our community and the voices in our community are much bigger than just this room. So how do you lead into that? And for the longest time, we did not want to, for a whole bunch of reasons, some of them very personal, some of them not. But the truth for me is that when harm began to be done in my community and I sensed that something was really off here, that the engagements that were happening were starting to harm people. Well, this is my community. I serve this community. That's why I'm here. That is my leadership mandate, is to serve my community and to serve it with my colleagues and to the best I can, even when I got a loser on my hands. But I cannot stand back and stand by and let harm be done in this community if I have the power to do something about it. I don't want to live in that community. It's not who we are. Pushed me deep. This one pushed me so deep. And I wasn't always good at it. And I wasn't always up for the challenge. Turned to a lot of my old wisdom stuff. I was once a philosophy student. Beware. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camp, says that the one freedom that we have is to choose our response. Councilmember Fernandez and I have had some long conversations about the choices and choosing a response and choosing a way forward, trying to do the best we can. Frankl says that the forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess except one thing: your freedom to choose how you will respond to that situation. So despite all of the language used at us, against us, all the othering, and there's another one for you. Martin Buber, othering. I heard one of our participants reporting in the listening session from concentration camps in Germany, visiting, trying to understand how the Holocaust occurred. The Holocaust occurred, as do all of our atrocities, when we marginalize people, when we make them those people, when we take the humanity out of the conversation. And then when we add to that the true believers, Eric Hoffer's true believers, those who are so invested in their movements that they give up self and cannot question it. And the movement becomes their way of being. And when you start othering people with a movement, you're going to get what happened in the Holocaust. You're going to get what's happening now in so many ways. But this leadership, I have my own strong opinions about this, but that's not what we're here to do. We're here to try and serve a whole community and find a way through it. So again, I dug deep, agreed with Councilmember Fernandez. We contracted with the Consensus Building Institute, and we took these steps. There's been a lot of criticism about the process by folks. I understand that for a lot of folks, you can't be a part of a process that might cause disagreement with where you stand so firmly in your beliefs. I understand that, wherever those beliefs are. And I also understand in this process, there are so many different beliefs, and there are so many different perspectives. And I don't want to make any of you wrong or diminish your faith and your beliefs unless you bring harm into our community, unless you start to break the fabric of who we are and the way we hold together, because that's what we got. It's who we are. And in this town, in this city, we value that. This council, this is a great, we do not deceive you. We do not hide things. We are as transparent as we can be. We might always do what you want, but you're going to know where we stand and what we're doing and why we do it. Yeah, we knew when we worked on this resolution that it wasn't going to make, there was lots of stuff that people would want in there. But you know, we gave it our best shot. And I think the really important thing is that Danielle and I can look at all of you and tell you that we did our best. We worked really hard and we did our best. We're an unlikely pair, but what we share are values. We share values around how we want to be with all of you and the honesty, integrity that we bring with all of you. There's nothing about this that's easy. And you know, I'm going to sit here not knowing until this moment that I'm going to encourage my colleagues to support this resolution. But if you don't, you got your perspectives too. That's okay, because we all got them. And this is important. And these are the kinds of things where we have to stay true. These are defining issues. How does this fit in what we're trying to do? So we gave it our best shot, no matter what. I appreciate the support of our city manager in helping us figure out how to do this. I deeply appreciate Councilmember Fernandez and my colleagues here at this, and all of you, because I want your voices here. And Danielle is right. 5 of us? How could we ever possibly know everything you want? But until we hear your voices, and you're going to hear more from us on how that's going to happen. But we have to do this together, and your voices are welcome here, whether I agree with you or not. It is not about agreement. It is about I thou. It is how I see you as someone that's worthy to spend my time with, to share my community with, to be with, because that's all we got. Thank you for your comments, and I will open this to my colleagues for further comments.
Okay, I will go. I agree with the principles in the resolution. I have also come to question if the City Council is the proper instrument for pursuing those principles. As I've said before in Council, there are similar violent conflicts between civilians and governments all around the world. The massacres in Darfur, Russia's bombing of Ukrainian cities, the Rohingya in Myanmar, the Uyghurs in China, and many others. The list of egregious human suffering at the hands of governments is ever growing and never complete. The military veteran Phil Clay wrote in the New York Times, "We must not close our eyes to suffering." I would add, just because there is so much of it. To do so is morally degrading. But how can we ethically deal with one of these conflicts and not the others? Is the resolution before us now just one of many more to come? If so, how can we on the City Council possibly be that well-versed in international diplomacy, generational trauma, and the skills needed to distinguish among propaganda, disinformation, social media, war crimes, and fact, and still know when it's time to replace a bridge, when we should repave a sidewalk, and where we should put a skate park, These are not morally equivalent tasks, but they both require full-time attention. So what can we do as a council when citizens approach us with their grief and their compassion? We have to do more than say it is beyond our jurisdiction. We should help them toward their desired goals, just as we help them toward safer streets, greater fire preparedness, and building a friendlier, more enjoyable, and more welcoming community. We didn't do that with this issue, and we should have. So I'm going to offer two suggestions. Not that I'm an expert on these conflicts or how to resolve them. I only have my own experience to draw on, several decades in the peace and justice movements. And here are things I have learned. First, look for organizations already working on international peace, nonviolent conflict resolution, humanitarian aid, and justice. The City Council is not your only resource. There are others that can help you toward that goal. I personally have chosen Rotary International, John Paul spoke eloquently on them, and World Central Kitchen. They are already on the ground and have experience dealing directly with people affected by conflict. Rotary International is going to be holding an international peace conference in Roanoke Park, California, in 4 months. I plan on going and learning and taking action. Second, to work on international peace, work on local peace. This is not done in committees and councils. It is face-to-face, person-to-person, and neighbor to neighbor. I know I cannot pursue peace with rage in my heart. Yet the anger is real. The outrage is real. The urgency to act is real. But if we measure success in terms of how much our opponents suffer, we create a world in which suffering is widespread and cruelty is merely a tool. My neighbor is not my enemy, and whoever says so is not interested in peace. So I seek out the neighbor whose understanding is different from mine. I don't seek them out to change their hearts. I seek them out to open mine. I will vote for this resolution. It states principles I believe in. It takes and mandates action that we have the power to take. But it doesn't end there. I also publicly resolve to follow the words of St. Francis, to seek more to understand than to be understood, and to be an agent of peace. I don't know how good I'll be at this, but I have to give it a chance.
Thank you, Councilman.
Do you want to follow that, or do you want?
No, your turn. What should you would like to follow that?
You have jokes.
Oh, you think I'm cracking wise this time?
Exactly. Don't you fucking
out of your mind. Yeah, out of your mind. Good Lord.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
All right. This will be so easy to follow. All right. Thank you, everybody, for this regrettably long journey. I want to, in particular, thank Liz. Did you show up every time? Every time. Yeah. Always, always human, and her values were always clear, and I appreciate that. So Friday night, I realized that this was available. We don't get this stuff early, you know. I wasn't one of the two who worked on it, and you can imagine I was excited to see what they had come up with. And my great relief that there were no lines where I went, It all felt like the values of the city that I know. I've been here 44 years and seeing the disharmony in the past year has been so upsetting, because that's not what we're about. In 44 years, there have been loads of disagreements that I've seen. I remember in junior high, we marched out of Seven Hills to protest the war in Iraq, and we were kids, and I think some of us had conservative parents who, thought we were idiots for being junior high kids at Seven Hills walking out of school. But it felt even then that there was a greater attempt at understanding. So it's been tough to hear reports and see video of people cursing at each other, spitting at each other. That's not what this area is about. That's not what we're about here. I find this resolution voices our community's values in support of protecting innocent lives. It doesn't contain all of my opinions on the subject, but it shouldn't. I wasn't involved in the process, and it's about consensus. It's about a bunch of people's opinions and seeing where there's overlap and seeing where there's a starting point for more discussion. And it's not about me, and it's not about any one person in this room or beyond this room. And I think it does what it does really well. I know from this process, and it was very interesting to hear how this process went, and from discussions I've had with, you don't even want to say people on both sides, because there are so many more than two sides on this. I know that our community grieves for Netanyahu's victims and the victims of Hamas, and we hope to see hostages return to their families and an end to the violence, most of all. And I think that much is clear in this resolution. So I appreciate you guys for working on this.
Okay, see, now, that is still a tough act to follow, Adam. You're good. I echo what you're saying. I echo what all you guys have said. I echo what most people have said in this room. I think this is an awful, atrocious situation. It's horrific. And I appreciate the passion and the tenacity of people like Zach and Liz and the rest of you who come time after time. A lot of times you were the only two here, and you guys kept coming. And I really appreciate, just the eloquence of some of the ways you've communicated with us and tried to get us to understand, how traumatized and how, impacted that many of you are by this situation. And calling it a situation is just, not giving it any credit whatsoever. It's much more than a situation. And I know that it's been contentious between us sometimes, and sometimes we may not have, let me speak for myself. I may not have, acted as mature as I could be, when, after getting called a white supremacist for a few times, I kind of lost it. But, I'm back now. And, I'm struggling though, I'm struggling with this not being the right forum. I know it's so important to so many people that this happen, but, I have a really big problem with opening this door because, we had a sort of dynamic before where the only other time that this council has spoken out on international matters is when it was the Vietnam War, and it involved people from our community who were getting drafted. And so there was definitely this nexus to Nevada City for this international, atrocious situation, another atrocious situation. We have a lot of these in our world. And so now we're saying that this international crisis is so important that we need to change what I believe is our mandate, which is to serve the citizens of this city and represent the citizens of this city in matters that pertain to this city. And look, I'm a lawyer. I can make the whole situation have a nexus to the city very easily, but I really don't think it does. And I just, I think this will cause a little bit more dysfunction for our council because other groups, when they get activated and traumatized and just sick of the awfulness that exists in our world, are going to come to us looking for help. I mean, I see that a lot of people came to us because they were hurting and they didn't have any place else to go. And this is their government, and this is the way that they can speak to people in power, and hopefully something will come of that. Again, the sentiment is amazing. I mean, I think this, if you don't believe this is an awful situation and that there is just horrific horrors on both sides, not that either there's any kind of proportionality, I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole, another conversation. But I now feel comfortable that this will pass on our council based on the way the wind is blowing. And I feel like I still have to stick to my beliefs in the process. And the process here is not that we address matters of international, atrocities and international affairs. And so, as opposed to voting against this, I just will abstain on this matter based on the passion that you guys have showed me and the passion that you guys have showed me, and knowing this is going to pass. If this was the deciding vote, I would have had a lot more trouble with this. But I think that's where I am on this. And again, I just have to appreciate everybody everywhere around the world who are speaking out on this issue, and especially the people here in our community. You guys have shown me a lot of heart. You guys have really, put yourselves in harm's way in a lot of cases to make your point to us. And I don't take that lightly. And so I do respect and I do appreciate it. But I hope you can understand my position, and it's just a procedural position. It's not about anything on the merits or anything that anybody believes on either side of this issue or all sides of this issue. So that's where I am, folks. Thanks for letting me say my piece.
Thank you, Council Member. As I said earlier, everybody's got perspectives on this, and they're all valuable. So I am looking for a motion to approve this resolution.
I move that we approve this resolution.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cici?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Abstention.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you all. All right. So we're going to, final comments, moving into the final comments and get. Oh, yeah.
I see a lot of folks in this room for the first time this last year, and I feel like I've been begging people to participate in this process for the first 3 years, and I'm so glad you guys made it, and I'm glad you came here, and I hope you stay, because on every agenda, we have items that affect the people who live, work, and own businesses in Nevada City, and oftentimes the room is empty and we have very little feedback. It does make us better and more representative when you are here and engaged, and we can do our jobs better when you are engaged. So I invite you to continue to participate in this with us.
Thank you, Council Member. Here. I think you're going to
Keep coming back.
Yes, keep coming
Works
back.
if you work.
Okay, so we're gonna get through this. We'll go to Sean first. Sean, you got a lengthy report for us tonight?
I give you 20 seconds. So tagging on to Councilmember Fernandez, if this is the end of your journey with us on this topic, we have other things for you. If you want to know about paint colors on buildings in the downtown, come to Planning Commission. If you want to hear about murals on buildings up on Highway 49 that are going to get painted, come to our Public Arts Commission. If you want to hear about opening a new park and recreation hub in Pioneer Park, offering programming there, including community gardens, which I think someone spoke about earlier, come to our Community Services Committee. If you want to share with us the benefits and the challenges of short-term rentals, or come yell at me about the nuisance ordinance, join us for Economic Community Development Committee meetings in October. If you want to learn about home hardening or ways that we can help make Nevada City safer from wildfire, then join us for either our defensible space and home hardening workshops, or come to our Fire Safety Advisory Committee. So come back to the things that you have passion about. We'd
Hey,
love to see
Sean,
you.
how can they find out about all those committees?
Yes, you can always visit our website, nevadacityca.gov. And my name's Sean. My email's on there as well, so you can always ask me about
Those are the
it.
things we do in our spare time. Right. Okay, anybody
Lots
else?
of opportunity. Please keep
Thank you,
coming
Sean.
back.
No committees.
You good? Yeah.
We don't have any committees.
I don't remember anything.
We have a super busy October, Daniela.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
She's
Awesome.
feeling sick now.
Yeah.
It's like,
As the
Go ahead, Lou.
As the liaison to the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan Tribe, I'm working with a local organization so that they can add a land recognition element to their public face.
Nice.
And we have our first neighbor-to-neighbor neighborhood meeting on this Saturday, the 28th, in the Piety Hill neighborhood. If any of you are residents of that Piety Hill neighborhood, come on over.
Party at Lou's house.
Well, right across the street
Oh,
from
right
Lou's
across the
house. My
street.
house is too small for more than 3 people.
Well, your street is so small, it's practically your front yard.
It is. Refreshments, light finger food, and a talk by the mayor, a talk by Evan, and a few words from me.
Great. So thank you. Again, tomorrow night, if you're not doing anything, 6 o'clock, Miners Foundry, Firewise Community Mixer. Figure out our number one priority is fire prevention. And that's doing a lot of work on that, which you heard earlier. So thank you for your attendance. Thank you. Looking for a motion to.
I move that we adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, could I say?
Sorry, did I leave the vice mayor out?
Yeah, you skipped the vice mayor.
Jesus,
I did
Adam.
skip it.
And he's pissed.
You went blank. You really?
I just wanted to point out. I just wanted to point out the other night that there was a bear struck by a vehicle on Highway 49, and
How could we forget?
2 officers went to clear the animal from Highway 49, and they were struck by a drunk driver, and they are both thankfully on the mend. But I just want to let them know that the council supports them 100% in their recovery.
Thank you for that, Council. Vice
Clearing,
Mayor.
clearing a bear cannot have been on like the job description, and certainly not being hit by a drunk driver. But thanks to those guys, and speedy recovery.
Here.
That was worth pausing the adjournment. Thank you for that, Adam.
Yeah.
You're welcome, everybody.
I move that we adjourn.
Looking for a second.
Second.